Hello friends. Did you know that nearly 80% of those who watch my videos aren't subscribed? If you enjoy the content, I'd truly appreciate it if you hit that subscribe button. It helps a lot. Also, don't forget to leave a like and share your thoughts in the comments. Your interaction not only supports the channel's growth, but also helps these stories reach more people. Thank you all for being here. By the way, where are you watching from? Let me know in the comments. The first hour of the night shift is always the quietest. Fluorescent lights buzz overhead, their persistent electrical hum eventually blending into background noise. The air conditioning system cycles on and off at irregular intervals, and outside, the Nevada desert stretches endlessly. Dark, boundless, and utterly lifeless. I am Agent Rebecca Hartwell. I work at the Surveillance Coordination Center, 42 miles north of the FBI Las Vegas field office. Everyone at work just calls me Hartwell. First names aren't necessary because between 11 p.m. and 7 a.m., only 2 people are on duty at this facility. Me and technical support operator David Kane. Kane stays in the server room downstairs. I work upstairs, in front of 12 monitors. My job is quite simple. Monitor the data stream from 24 thermal cameras and 36 motion sensors deployed in the northwestern part of Nevada. This area is officially designated as Restricted Area 7N. It does not appear on civilian maps. I don't know why it's kept so secret. When I was assigned here 6 months ago, they didn't tell me why, and I didn't ask. The building itself is unremarkable. Single-story concrete structure, reinforced walls, no windows except for a small one in the break room that looks out onto nothing but sand and scrub brush. During the day, you can see heat waves rising from the desert floor. At night, there's just darkness pressing against the glass like something solid. I arrived at 10:47 p.m., 13 minutes early as always. Day shift operator, Agent Marcus Webb, was already gathering his things when I walked in. Webb's been doing this job for 3 years, longer than anyone else. He's efficient, doesn't talk much, which suits me fine. Quiet night, Webb said, not looking up from the log sheet he was finishing. His voice had that flat quality people develop when they've said the same words too many times. Any activity? I asked, setting my thermos down on the desk. Black coffee, no sugar. I'd need it. Nothing. Standard readings across all sectors. He signed the bottom of the log sheet and pushed it toward me. Equipment check at 2100 hours. Everything operational. Sector 4 camera had a brief flicker around 1930 but came back online immediately. I glanced at the monitors. 12 screens displaying various sections of the desert in thermal imaging. Shades of blue and purple dominated. Cold ground, cold air, cold rocks. Occasionally, a small bloom of orange or yellow would appear as a coyote or jackrabbit crossed a sensor field. Standard wildlife. Nothing unusual. Sector 4, I repeated, making a note. Which camera? North-facing, camera 14. Webb stood, grabbed his jacket from the back of his chair. Probably just a power fluctuation. Haven't had any issues since. He moved toward the door, then paused. It was unusual. Webb never paused. What? I asked. He stood there for a moment, his hand on the door frame, not quite looking back at me. You ever wonder what they're actually watching for out there? The question caught me off guard. In 6 months, Webb had never asked anything like that. He was all business, all procedure. I figure if they wanted us to know, they'd tell us, I said. Webb nodded slowly. Yeah, that's what I figured too. But he didn't sound convinced. Have a good shift, Hartwell. The door closed behind him with a heavy metallic click. The lock engaged automatically. I was alone now, except for Kane, somewhere in the basement with his servers and diagnostic equipment. I settled into the chair and began my routine. First, visual scan of all 12 monitors. Then, a check of the motion sensor grid displayed on the primary screen. All green indicators normal. I logged the time, 22:53 hours, and noted shift transition complete, no anomalies. The coffee was still hot. I poured a cup and let the steam warm my face. The AC was aggressive in here, keeping the equipment cool. The temperature stayed around 62 degrees year-round. I'd learned to dress in layers. At 23:11 hours, I ran my first equipment diagnostic. Each camera cycled through a brief test sequence. Pan left, pan right, zoom in, zoom out, thermal calibration. All systems responded normally. I logged it. The night stretched ahead. 8 hours of watching empty desert through thermal imaging. Most shifts were like this, absolutely nothing happening. Occasionally, we'd track what turned out to be illegal border crossers, though we were nowhere near the Mexican border. Those instances were rare, and we'd report the coordinates to Border Patrol. Usually, it was just animals. Desert wildlife following ancient pathways that humans would never understand. At 23:45 hours, I noticed movement in Sector 7. Small heat signature, moving erratically. I zoomed camera 19 and watched as a coyote nosed around some rocks, probably hunting rodents. The animal moved in and out of frame, then disappeared into a gully. I noted it in the log. Standard procedure required logging any thermal signature above ambient temperature. The coffee was helping. I was on my second cup when the clock hit midnight. That's when I saw it. Sector 4. Camera 14. The one Webb mentioned had flickered earlier. A heat signature appeared on the screen. Not small like a coyote. Not the scattered orange blobs of multiple small animals. This was a single thermal bloom, roughly human-sized, standing completely still in the middle of absolutely nothing. I stared at it. The signature was clear, a vertical column of heat rising from the ground, consistent with a person standing upright. But the location made no sense. Camera 14 covered a section of desert approximately 60 miles from the nearest road. There were no hiking trails, no abandoned structures, no reason for anyone to be there. Especially not at midnight. I checked the coordinates. The signature was positioned at 38.7842 NN 117.33 W. I pulled up the topographical overlay. Flat desert basin, no vegetation above 6 inches, no geological features except scattered rocks. Nothing that would generate a heat signature like this. I zoomed in. The thermal image sharpened. The heat signature remained constant, human-shaped, human-sized, not moving. The temperature differential was significant. Whatever this was, it was approximately 98 degrees, contrasting sharply with the 50-degree desert night. I reached for the phone to call Kane, then hesitated. Could be a malfunction. Camera 14 had flickered earlier. Maybe it was a ghost image, some kind of thermal echo in the sensor. I'd look foolish calling down to the server room for a glitch. Instead, I switched camera 14 to maximum zoom. The heat signature filled the screen now. Definitely human-shaped. 2 legs, a torso, what appeared to be arms at the sides. The head area showed slightly cooler than the core body temperature, which was consistent with actual human thermal patterns. But it wasn't moving, not even slightly. No shift in weight, no movement of arms, no turning of the head. Just standing there in the middle of nowhere, 60 miles from anything. I checked the timestamp. The signature had appeared at 0001 hours. 3 minutes ago. I pulled up the motion sensor grid for Sector 4. The nearest sensor was approximately 200 yards from the thermal signature's location. It showed no activation. Nothing had crossed its detection field. That didn't make sense. To reach that position, whatever this was would have had to cross multiple sensor fields, unless it had been there all along, somehow invisible to thermal imaging until now. But that was impossible. Our cameras ran continuous sweeps. If something warm-blooded had been standing there, we would have seen it during the last equipment check at 2311 hours. I rewound the footage from camera 14, played it back from 2300 hours. Empty desert. Purple and blue thermal imaging showing cold ground and colder air. A few small signatures that could have been rodents or snakes moving along the edges of frame. Normal. Then, at exactly 001 hours, the human-shaped signature simply appeared. Not walking into frame. Not gradually warming up. Just there, instantly, as if someone had flipped a switch. The coffee in my cup had gone cold. I hadn't noticed. I reached for the phone again, then stopped. Think this through, Hartwell. What exactly are you going to report? That a thermal camera is showing a heat signature in the middle of the desert? That's literally what these cameras are designed to detect. The logical explanation was equipment malfunction or some kind of atmospheric phenomenon creating a false reading. I switched to camera 15, which covered an adjacent sector with some overlap. Adjusted the angle to point toward the location where camera 14 was showing the signature. Camera 15 showed nothing, just cold desert. I switched back to camera 14. The signature was still there, standing motionless in the same spot. Two cameras, covering the same area from different angles. One showing a human-shaped heat signature, the other showing nothing. Equipment malfunction. Had to be. I made a note in the log. 004 hours. Camera 14 showing possible false thermal reading. Coordinates 38.7842 to WN 117-33991 WW. Running diagnostic. I initiated a diagnostic on camera 14. The system ran through its calibration sequence. Temperature sensor operational. Lens assembly. Operational. Thermal imaging processor. Operational. All green indicators. No errors detected. The diagnostic completed. I switched the feed back to live view. The signature was gone. I stared at the screen. Empty desert. Purple and blue gradients. No human-shaped heat bloom. Nothing. I checked the timestamp. The signature had disappeared at 006 hours, exactly when I'd started the diagnostic sequence. I sat back in my chair, feeling the tension in my shoulders. 5 minutes. The signature had been visible for exactly 5 minutes, then vanished the moment I ran a diagnostic. Coincidence. Had to be. The diagnostic probably reset whatever sensor glitch was creating the false reading, but I couldn't shake the image from my mind. The shape of it. Too perfect, too human. And the way it had appeared, not walking into frame, just there, instantly. I pulled up the archive and flagged the footage from 001 to 06 hours. Whatever it was, real or glitch, I wanted it documented. Then I logged the incident. Camera 14 thermal anomaly resolved after diagnostic. No current issues. The rest of the hour passed without incident. I drank more coffee, ran standard sensor sweeps, watched the empty desert do absolutely nothing. At 0100 hours, I performed another full equipment check. All systems operational. No anomalies. At 0137 hours, I decided to review the archived footage one more time. Just to be sure. I pulled up camera 14, starting from 00 hours. Watched the thermal feed. Empty desert, cold and still. Then, at 001 hours, the signature appeared. But this time, I noticed something I'd missed before. The signature wasn't perfectly still. When I'd watched it live, I'd thought it was motionless. But now, studying the playback frame by frame, I could see a subtle shift. Not movement exactly, more like a pulse. The thermal signature was very slightly expanding and contracting, rhythmically approximately 15 times per minute, like breathing. I zoomed in further, analyzing the pattern. The expansion was minimal, barely detectable, but it was there. Consistent with the respiratory rate of a resting human adult. If this was a sensor malfunction, it was remarkably sophisticated. I sat back and forced myself to think rationally. There were explanations. Atmospheric distortion, temperature inversions, reflections from distant heat sources somehow bouncing through the desert air and creating false readings. The desert played tricks. Everyone knew that. But 60 miles from anything. And why would it appear and disappear so precisely? Why would a temperature inversion create something that looked like it was breathing? I checked the environmental data. Outside temperature, 48 degrees. Humidity, 12%. Wind, 3 miles per hour from the northwest. No unusual atmospheric conditions. Nothing that would explain a thermal mirage. I made another note in the log. Further review of camera 14 anomaly shows rhythmic variation consistent with respiration. Likely atmospheric phenomenon. Continuing to monitor. The words looked official enough on paper. Professional. But they didn't explain anything. I checked the other cameras, all showing normal readings. Sector 7 had another coyote. Sector 2 showed what might have been a kit fox. Regular desert night activity. Everything normal, except for those 5 minutes in Sector 4. At 200 hours, I called down to Kane in the server room. The phone rang 4 times before he picked up. Kane, it's Hartwell. You monitoring equipment performance from down there? Continuous. Why? His voice was sharp, alert. Kane took his job seriously. Had a thermal anomaly on camera 14 about 2 hours ago. Ran a diagnostic, it cleared. Just wanted to check if you saw anything on your end. I heard typing in the background. Kane pulling up his logs. Camera 14, he said. Yeah, I see it. Brief spike in thermal processor activity at 001 hours. Normalized at 006. Nothing unusual. Sensors do that sometimes. Heat builds up in the housing, creates a phantom reading until it dissipates. Heat buildup, I repeated. The explanation sounded reasonable. That common? Common enough. I see it maybe once, twice a month across all cameras. Usually during day shift when the sun's heating the equipment. Less common at night, but it happens. You log it? Yeah, flag the footage too. Good. If it happens again, let me know. Otherwise, I wouldn't worry about it. He paused. Everything else running smooth up there? All green. Okay, I'll be down here if you need me. The line went dead. I set the phone down and looked at the monitors. Heat buildup in the camera housing. That made sense. That was logical. Kane would know. He'd been running tech support here for 5 years, long before I arrived. So, why did I still feel uneasy? I poured more coffee and tried to focus on the routine. Hourly equipment checks, sensor sweeps, logging activity. The night was long and there were still 6 hours left in my shift. At 02:43 hours, movement in Sector 9 caught my attention. Larger heat signature than the usual wildlife. I zoomed camera 22 and watched as a small group of feral horses moved across the basin. Beautiful animals, wild and free. Descendants of ranching stock from decades ago. I counted 6 of them, their thermal signatures bright orange against the cold desert. They moved slowly, grazing on whatever sparse vegetation they could find. I logged it, 0243 hours. 6 feral horses, Sector 9, moving northeast. Normal. Everything was normal, except my hands were shaking slightly when I wrote it down. At 0300 hours, I stood up and walked to the break room. The small window looked out onto darkness. I couldn't see anything, just my own reflection in the glass. I looked tired. 6 months of night shift will do that. I made fresh coffee and ate a protein bar that tasted like cardboard. The break room was silent except for the hum of the refrigerator. On the wall, there was a calendar from 2019, never updated. Someone had circled a date in June with red marker. No notation, no explanation, just a circle. I went back to the monitors. At 3:18 hours, I pulled up the archived footage from camera 14 again. I don't know why. I shouldn't have. It was resolved. Kane had explained it. Heat buildup, phantom reading, move on. But I watched it anyway. 001 hours. The signature appears. Human-shaped, standing motionless except for that subtle breathing pattern. I let the footage play, watched for the full 5 minutes. The signature just stood there, alone in the vast desert darkness, breathing. At 006 hours, it vanished. I rewound and watched again, and again. I must have watched that 5-minute sequence a dozen times, studying every frame, looking for what? I didn't know. On the 7th replay, I noticed something else. At 004 hours, 2 minutes before the signature disappeared, there was a subtle change. The heat pattern shifted slightly, not the breathing pattern that remained constant. This was different. The thermal image showed a brief intensification in the head region, as if whatever this was had turned to look directly at the camera. I zoomed in on those specific frames. The resolution wasn't high enough to show details, but the thermal shift was clear. The signature had turned, faced the camera, then, 2 minutes later, disappeared. My mouth was dry. I drank coffee, but it didn't help. Think rationally. Heat buildup in camera housing, phantom reading. The apparent turning was just a fluctuation in the sensor error, nothing more. But it looked deliberate. It looked like something becoming aware it was being watched. I checked the time. 3:39 hours. Still over 3 hours left in my shift. I forced myself to look away from camera 14's archive and focus on the live feeds. All quiet, all normal. The desert slept. At 0400 hours, I ran another full equipment diagnostic. Every camera, every sensor, every system, all operational, all normal. At 0427 hours, I was logging routine activity when I heard it. A sound from somewhere in the building, below me. A metallic scraping like something being dragged across concrete. I froze, listening. The sound came again, definitely from downstairs, near the server room where Kane was working. I picked up the phone and called his extension. It rang, and rang, and rang, no answer. The scraping sound continued, rhythmic, deliberate. I called again. Still, no answer. Standard protocol was to never leave the monitoring station unmanned during shift. But Kane wasn't answering his phone, and that sound... I stood up, walked to the door, unlocked it. The hallway was empty. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. The scraping sound had stopped. "Kane?" I called out. My voice echoed off concrete walls. No response. I walked toward the stairs that led down to the server room. Each step seemed too loud in the silence. At the top of the stairs, I stopped and listened. Nothing. Just the ambient hum of building systems. "Kane, you down there?" Still nothing. I descended the stairs slowly. The server room door was at the end of a short hallway, partially open. Light spilled out into the corridor. I approached carefully. Looked through the gap. Kane was sitting at his workstation, headphones on, focused on 3 monitors displaying system diagnostics. He was typing something, completely absorbed in his work. I knocked on the door frame. He jumped slightly and turned around, pulling off his headphones. "Jesus, Hartwell, you scared me. You didn't answer your phone." He glanced at the desk phone. "Had the headphones on, didn't hear it. Everything okay?" I heard something, scraping sound. Thought it came from down here. Kane looked confused. "Scraping? I didn't hear anything. Probably the HVAC system. These old desert facilities, they make all kinds of noises. Expanding metal, contracting pipes, you know." I nodded. That made sense. Old building, temperature fluctuations, metal expanding and contracting. Logical. "Sorry to bother you," I said. "No problem. Better to check than ignore it." He smiled. "This place gets weird at night, doesn't it? All alone out here in the middle of nowhere." "Yeah," I said, "it does." I went back upstairs to the monitoring station. Everything was as I'd left it. 12 monitors showing thermal imaging of empty desert. All quiet. I sat down and checked the time. 0441 hours. I pulled up camera 14. The signature was back. Same location. Same coordinates. Standing in the exact same spot where it had appeared at 001 hours. My heart was pounding. I checked the timestamp. The signature had appeared at 0438 hours, while I was downstairs talking to Kane. I grabbed the phone and called down to the server room. "Kane, I need you to check camera 14 right now." "What's wrong?" "Just check it, please." I heard typing through the phone. A pause. "I'm showing normal readings," Kane said. "Thermal processor is operating within parameters, no errors. You're not seeing a heat signature at coordinates 38.7842 north, 1173391 west." More typing. Longer pause. "No," Kane said slowly. "I'm not seeing anything unusual. What are you seeing?" I stared at the monitor. The human-shaped thermal signature stood motionless in the desert darkness. "It's there," I said. "Same signature as before, same location." "Hartwell, my systems aren't showing any anomaly. Are you sure you're not looking at archived footage?" I checked. Live feed. Current timestamp, 0444 hours. "It's live, Kane." "Okay, I'm going to run a remote diagnostic on camera 14. Stand by." I watched the monitor. The signature remained. Still. Silent. Alone in the vast desert. Then, as I watched, it moved. Not much. Just a slight tilt of the head area. Like before. Like it was turning to look at the camera, to look at me. "Kane, diagnostic running. Should take about 30 seconds. The signature took a step forward. A single step. Clear, deliberate movement. The heat pattern shifted, one leg extending, weight transferring, then settling again. Closer to the camera than before. "Kane, it's moving." "What do you mean, moving?" Another step, slow, deliberate. My hands gripped the edge of the desk. "It's walking toward the camera." "Hartwell, that's not possible. If something was actually there, the motion sensors would activate. I'm not seeing any sensor triggers." Another step. The signature was definitely approaching camera 14's position. Walking through the desert at a steady, unhurried pace. "Check the motion sensors again," I said, my voice tight. "I'm looking at them right now. All green. Nothing's moving through Sector 4. But something was. I could see it. Step by step, the thermal signature was getting closer. "Diagnostic complete," Kane said. "Everything checks out. Cameras functioning normally. Hartwell, are you feeling okay? You've been on night shift for 6 months straight. Sometimes the isolation, I know what I'm seeing." Another step. The signature was approximately 50 yards from the camera now. I could see more detail in the thermal image. The breathing pattern was still there, that rhythmic expansion and contraction. 15 breaths per minute. Human, normal. "I'm coming up," Kane said. The signature stopped walking. It stood there, motionless again, 50 yards from camera 14. The head area tilted slightly, as if listening. Then it turned away from the camera and looked toward the west, toward the facility where I sat, toward me. I heard Kane's footsteps on the stairs. He came into the monitoring room, walked over to my station and looked at the screens. "Which one?" he asked. I pointed at camera 14's monitor. Kane stared at it for a long moment. "I don't see anything, Hartwell. It's just empty desert." I looked at the screen. The signature was right there, clear as day, human-shaped, standing in the desert, looking toward us. "You don't see it?" My voice sounded strange even to me. "No, there's nothing there." Kane's voice was gentle now, concerned. "Hartwell, when's the last time you had a full night's sleep?" I couldn't answer. Couldn't look away from the monitor. The signature raised one arm, slowly, deliberately, and pointed directly at the camera, directly at me. "Kane, please tell me you see that." He put a hand on my shoulder. "I see empty desert, that's all. Maybe you should take a break. Go outside, get some air. I'll watch the monitors." "No," I shook my head. "No, I can't leave the station." "Hartwell, protocol says monitoring station must be manned at all times during shift." My words came out fast, mechanical. "I can't leave." Kane sighed. Okay, I'll stay up here with you for a while. We'll watch together." He pulled up a chair and sat next to me. We both stared at camera 14's monitor. The signature's arm was still raised, still pointing. "How long has this shift been?" Kane asked quietly. 6 months. That's a long time out here alone. The desert does things to people, the isolation, the darkness, the absolute emptiness of it all. Human brains aren't wired for this kind of solitude. "I'm fine. Are you?" I didn't answer. We sat in silence. The monitors glowed. The fluorescent lights buzzed. Outside, the Nevada desert stretched into infinite darkness. The signature slowly lowered its arm. Then it turned and walked away from the camera. Not hurrying, just walking. Step by step. Moving back toward the coordinates where it had first appeared. I watched it go. Watched until it reached that original position and stopped. And stood there, breathing. At 05:12 hours, Kane went back downstairs to the server room. Before he left, he suggested again that I should consider requesting a transfer. Maybe day shift, maybe a different facility entirely, somewhere with windows and other people around. I told him I'd think about it. But I wouldn't, because I knew what would happen if I left. Someone else would sit in this chair, someone else would watch these monitors. And when the signature appeared again, because I knew it would, they would see it too. Or they wouldn't. And I didn't know which possibility frightened me more. The rest of the shift passed in a blur. I logged routine activities, ran equipment checks, watched the thermal feeds. Everything normal. Except for camera 14. The signature remained in that spot for the rest of the night. Never moving. Just standing there in the absolute middle of nowhere, breathing slowly, alone in the dark. At 0647 hours, I started preparing the shift transition log for Agent Marcus Webb, who would arrive in 13 minutes to begin day shift. At 06:58 hours, the signature disappeared. One moment it was there. The next moment, gone. No walking away. No gradual fading. Just there, then not there. I noted it in the log. 06:58 hours. Thermal anomaly resolved. Camera 14 functioning normally. Webb arrived at 0700 hours exactly. He set down his thermos and looked at the monitors. "How was it?" he asked. "Quiet," I said. He nodded and started reading through my log notes. When he reached the entry about camera 14, he paused. "Thermal anomaly," he read aloud. "Same camera that flickered yesterday." "Yeah. Did you see what I saw?" he asked quietly, not looking up from the log. My heart stopped. "What did you see?" Webb was silent for a moment. Then he said, "Heat buildup in the camera housing creates phantom readings sometimes. Kane explained it to me months ago." "Right, heat buildup." He signed the log and handed it to me. Our hands didn't quite meet. "Have a good day, Hartwell." I gathered my things and walked to the door. Paused, looked back at the monitors. All 12 screens showing empty desert and thermal imaging. Blues and purples, cold and still. "Webb? Yeah? You ever wonder what they're actually watching for out here?" He didn't answer for a long time. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. "Every single day." I left the facility and walked to my car in the pale, gray light of dawn. The desert stretched endlessly in all directions. Nothing but sand and scrub brush and rocks, empty, lifeless. Somewhere out there, 60 miles from anything, was a patch of ground with coordinates 38.78422 degrees N, 117.33991 degrees WW. I drove away and didn't look back. That was 6 years ago. I lasted 3 more months at the Surveillance Coordination Center before requesting a transfer. They granted it without question. I think they were expecting it. Night shift in the desert has a high turnover rate. They stationed me at the FBI field office in Reno. Records division. Day shift. Fluorescent lights and filing cabinets instead of thermal cameras and endless darkness. It should have been better, it wasn't. The transfer didn't erase what I'd seen. What I continued to see every time I closed my eyes. That human-shaped heat signature standing alone in the vast desert night. Breathing. Watching. Pointing at me. I threw myself into the work at Reno. Cataloging evidence. Organizing case files. Maintaining chains of custody. Paperwork. Endless, mind-numbing paperwork. It was exactly what I needed. Something concrete, something real, something that made sense. For 2 years, it worked. I convinced myself that Kane had been right. Isolation, darkness, the human brain creating patterns where none existed. I'd been tired, stressed. The desert had played tricks on my mind. That's what I told myself. Then, on a Tuesday in October, I was assigned to reorganize the auxiliary archive in sublevel 2. The auxiliary archive was where old case files went to die. Records from closed investigations dating back to the 1980s. Everything had been scanned and digitized years ago, but bureau policy required maintaining physical copies. So they sat in boxes, in climate-controlled storage, gathering dust. Sublevel 2 was accessed through a service elevator at the end of the east corridor. The elevator was old, the kind with a metal gate that you had to close manually. It descended with a grinding mechanical whine that echoed in the shaft. The doors opened onto a concrete hallway lined with fluorescent lights. The ceiling was low. The air was cool and dry and smelled faintly of old paper and concrete dust. My footsteps echoed. The archive room was the third door on the left. Heavy steel door with a keycard reader. I swiped my access card and heard the magnetic lock disengage with a solid clunk. The room was larger than I expected. Maybe 40 feet by 60 feet. Metal shelving units arranged in neat rows, stretching from floor to ceiling. Thousands of cardboard file boxes, each labeled with case numbers and dates. Track lighting overhead cast harsh shadows between the rows. I was alone. That was normal. Archive reorganization was a one-person job. You'd work methodically, checking each box against the inventory database, making sure everything was properly cataloged. I set up my laptop on a small desk near the door and got started. The work was tedious but straightforward. Pull a box, check the label, verify against the database. Make notes of any discrepancies. Replace the box. Move to the next one, row by row, box by box. I'd been working for about 3 hours when I noticed something odd. A box in row 7, third shelf up. The label read, RZ7N, Surveillance Log, 1987 to 1992, Classified. RZ7N, Restricted Zone 7N. The same designation as the area I'd monitored during my time at the Surveillance Coordination Center. I pulled the box down. It was heavier than expected. I carried it to the desk and opened it. Inside were dozens of logbooks, handwritten entries, dated, signed. Surveillance reports from agents monitoring Restricted Zone 7N. The logs started in March 1987 and ended in December 1992. I flipped through them. The entries were similar to the ones I'd written during my own shift. Equipment checks, sensor readings, wildlife sightings, routine activities. Then I found an entry from September 1987. The handwriting was neat, precise. Agent John Mercer's signature at the bottom. 0M Munson, hours, thermal anomaly, camera 14, sector 4. Heat signature consistent with adult human, coordinates 38.7842N, 117.391 W. Signature appeared instantaneously, no prior movement detected. Ran diagnostic. All systems operational. Signature present for 7 minutes, then disappeared. No motion sensor activation. Possible equipment malfunction. I read it again, then again, the same camera, the same coordinates, the exact same coordinates. In 1987, 20 years before my shift. My hands were shaking. I set the logbook down and looked through the others. October 1987. Agent Sarah Brennan. 0203 hours. Thermal signature returned. Camera 14. Same coordinates as previous report. Mercer, Septis 87. Signature stationary for 12 minutes. Appeared to turn toward the camera at 0211 hours. Disappeared at 0215 hours. Requesting equipment replacement. November 1987. Agent Sarah Brennan again. Camera 14 replaced per request. New equipment installed 11:15-87. Thermal signature reappeared 11:23-87 at 0156 hours. Same coordinates. This is not equipment malfunction. Requesting clarification on monitoring protocols for RZ7N. I flipped forward. December 1987, January 1988. The entries continued. Different agents, same reports. The thermal signature appeared repeatedly throughout 1988. Always camera 14. Always the same coordinates, always between midnight and 0600 hours. Some agents noted that the signature seemed to move, to walk toward the camera. One agent, someone named Miller, wrote that it had raised its arm and pointed, just like I'd seen. In April 1989, Agent Miller's entries became more erratic. His handwriting changed. The notes were shorter, more cryptic. 0238 hours, it's watching us. 0412 hours, why won't they tell us what it is? 0521 hours, I can't do this anymore. The logs from Agent Miller stopped abruptly in May 1989. The next entry was from a different agent, Patterson, who noted, Agent Miller transferred at his request, resuming standard monitoring protocols. I kept reading, through 1989 through 90. The thermal signature appeared with increasing frequency, multiple sightings per month. The reports were consistent. Always the same location, always the same behavior. And then, in August 91, something changed. Agent Patterson's entry, 0307 hours. Multiple thermal signatures, Sector 4. Camera 14 shows 7 distinct heat sources at varying distances from primary location, 38.7842 N, 117.3391 1W. Signatures arranged in circular formation approximately 200 yards diameter. All signatures stationary. No motion sensor activation. This is unprecedented. Requesting immediate supervisor review. The next entry was 3 days later. Different handwriting. Supervisor notation. Investigation into Camera 14 anomalies ongoing. All footage from AUG 1991 classified above Agent Patterson's clearance level. Standard monitoring to continue. Do not discuss thermal signatures with other personnel. After that, the entries became sparse. Just routine equipment checks. Wildlife sightings. No mention of thermal signatures. The logbooks ended in December 1992. The last entry was from Agent Patterson. Final shift. Facility monitoring protocols changed. Oversight transferred to different division. This logbook to be archived and sealed. I sat back in my chair. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. The archive room was silent. Someone had been seeing that signature for at least 5 years before they sealed the records. Multiple agents, multiple witnesses, all seeing the same thing. And then they'd buried it down here in sub-level 2. I looked at the box. There were more logbooks inside. I pulled them out, found files underneath. Printed reports, photographs. Black and white photographs of the desert at night, taken with night vision cameras. Most showed nothing unusual. Empty landscape, rocks and sand. But 3 photographs were different. They showed Camera 14's location, and in each photograph you could see them. Not thermal signatures. Actual figures standing in the desert. The resolution was poor. The figures were distant, barely visible in the grainy night vision image. But they were there, human-shaped, standing in a circle. 7 of them, I counted. 7 figures arranged exactly as Agent Patterson had described in his August 1991 entry. There was a typed report clipped to the photographs. The header read, "Preliminary findings, RZ7N investigation, classified." I read it. The report stated that in September 1991, a team had been dispatched to coordinates 38.7842 N, 117.391 W to investigate the recurring thermal signatures. They'd found nothing. No footprints. No disturbance of the desert surface. No evidence that anything had ever been there. But they'd installed additional sensors, seismic monitors, atmospheric analyzers, radiation detectors. The sensors recorded anomalies, temperature fluctuations that didn't correspond to any known weather phenomenon, electromagnetic variations that couldn't be explained. The report concluded, evidence suggests phenomenon is real, but of unknown origin. Recommend continued monitoring and classification above standard clearance levels. Further investigation suspended pending review. There was a handwritten note at the bottom of the last page. I had to squint to read it. Don't send anyone else out there. We lost Martinez. No signature, no date. Just that single sentence. We lost Martinez. I looked through the rest of the box. Found a personnel file. Agent Robert Martinez assigned to RZ7N investigation team in September 1991. Status, missing. Presumed deceased. Body never recovered. The file contained a single photograph. Martinez in his FBI windbreaker standing next to a vehicle in the desert. Young guy, maybe 30. He was smiling. I put everything back in the box, carefully, exactly as I'd found it. Then I logged it in the database as verified and properly archived. I didn't tell anyone what I'd read. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept seeing those photographs, 7 figures standing in the desert. And I kept thinking about Martinez. We lost Martinez. What did that mean? Had he disappeared while investigating the site? Had he gone out to those coordinates and never come back? I pulled up the FBI's internal database on my personal laptop, searched for Robert Martinez, found his file. It was heavily redacted. Most of the details were classified above my clearance level, but I could see the basics. Assigned to Las Vegas Field Office, 1989 to 1991. Specialty: unexplained phenomena investigation. Status: killed in action, September 24, 1991. Killed in action, not missing. The file had been updated. There was a memorial page. Other agents had left comments over the years. Most were generic condolences. But one comment stood out. From Agent Sarah Brennan, posted in 1995. Martinez was a good man and a dedicated agent. He deserved better than being sent out there alone. We all knew something was wrong with that place. They should have listened to us. Sarah Brennan. I recognized the name from the logbooks. She'd been one of the agents monitoring RZ-7N in 1987. I searched for her in the database. Retired in 2003. Last known address: Las Vegas, Nevada. I shouldn't have done what I did next. It violated about a dozen regulations, but I found her phone number in an online directory and I called her. She answered on the 4th ring. Her voice was older, tired. Yes? Agent Brennan, my name is Rebecca Hartwell. I'm with the FBI Reno office. I was hoping I could ask you a few questions about your time monitoring Restricted Zone 7N. There was a long silence. Then, who gave you my number? I found it in, you shouldn't be calling me about this. That assignment was classified. Still is. I know. But I worked at the Surveillance Coordination Center. I saw what you saw. Camera 14. The thermal signatures. Another silence. Longer this time. Where are you calling from? She asked. My apartment in Reno. This line isn't secure. If you want to talk, it needs to be in person, and not anywhere official. Do you know the Silver Peak Diner off Highway 95? I can find it. Tomorrow, noon, come alone, and Agent Hartwell. Yes? Think very carefully about whether you really want to know the truth. She hung up. I sat there holding the phone, my heart pounding. Think very carefully about whether you really want to know the truth. But I already knew. I'd known since the moment I'd seen that signature standing in the desert, breathing, watching. Something was out there. And tomorrow, I was going to find out what happened to the people who went looking for it. The Silver Peak Diner sat at the edge of nowhere. A weathered aluminum structure surrounded by desert scrub and distant mountains. A handful of vehicles clustered in the gravel parking lot. Pickup trucks mostly, dust-covered and sun-faded. The kind of place where travelers stopped for coffee and locals came to avoid being home. I arrived at 11:47 a.m., 13 minutes early out of habit. The October sun was merciless, turning the desert into a shimmering heat mirage. I sat in my car with the AC running and watched the diner's entrance. At exactly noon, a silver Honda Civic pulled into the lot. An older woman got out. Gray hair pulled back in a ponytail, jeans, and a faded denim shirt. She moved with the careful deliberation of someone who'd learned not to trust their surroundings. Sarah Brennan. Had to be. She glanced at my car, then walked into the diner. I waited 30 seconds, then followed. The interior was what you'd expect. Worn vinyl booths. Formica countertops. a ceiling fan turning slowly overhead, the smell of coffee and fryer grease. 3 other customers scattered at different tables, all focused on their meals or phones. No one looked up when I entered. Brennan sat in a booth at the far back, facing the door. Old habits, always sit where you can see the entrance. I slid into the seat across from her. Up close, I could see the years had been harder than they should have been. She looked 70, but was probably closer to 60. Lines around her eyes that came from squinting at too many dark things. "Agent Hartwell," she said. It wasn't a question. "Yes, ma'am." A waitress appeared. We both ordered coffee. The waitress shuffled away. Brennan studied me in silence, evaluating, deciding how much to trust. "You said you worked at the facility," she finally said. 6 months, night shift, 2013 to 2004. "And you saw it. Camera 14, Sector 4, the thermal signature." She nodded slowly. "Same coordinates every time? 387842 north, 1173391 west." Something flickered in her eyes. Recognition. Or maybe fear. 26 years, she said quietly. 26 years and it's still there. The coffee arrived. We both stared at it without drinking. "I found the archive," I said. "The logbooks from 1987 to 92. I read your entries, Agent Mercer's, Patterson's, all of them. You shouldn't have done that. Those files were sealed for a reason." "I know, but I needed to understand. I needed to know I wasn't..." I stopped. "Crazy," Brennan finished. "You weren't, aren't, none of us were. Tell me what happened." She wrapped both hands around her coffee cup like she was trying to draw warmth from it, even though the diner was stifling. "It started in March 1987, she said. "I was 3 years out of Quantico. They assigned me to the Surveillance Coordination Center. Told me I'd be monitoring a restricted zone for potential illegal border activity. That was the cover story. Truth was, they'd been watching that area since the early 80s. Watching for what? They never told me. Just said to log anything unusual and report it immediately." She paused. First signature appeared on my 3rd shift. Camera 14, those exact coordinates. Stood there for 9 minutes. I reported it. Supervisor told me to note it and continue monitoring, so I did. "How often did it appear?" "At first, maybe once a week. Always between midnight and dawn, always the same spot, just standing there." She finally took a sip of coffee. "Agent Mercer and I compared notes. He'd seen it too. Different shifts, same signature. We started documenting everything. Tried to find patterns." "Did you?" "Lunar phases. It appeared more frequently during new moons and always on certain dates. March 19th, August 23rd, December 14th. We didn't know what the significance was, but those dates showed up repeatedly." I pulled out a small notebook. "Do you mind if I..." "No notes." Her voice was sharp. "Nothing written down, nothing digital. You want to remember this, you remember it in here." She tapped her forehead. I put the notebook away. "After about 6 months," Brennan continued, "they brought in a specialist, guy named Dr. Lawrence Chen, physicist, Stanford. He spent 2 weeks analyzing the thermal data, the electromagnetic readings, everything. Then he disappeared." "Disappeared?" "Transferred, reassigned, whatever you want to call it. I asked my supervisor about Chen's findings. Got told it was above my clearance level and to drop it. But I saw Chen before he left. He looked scared, really scared. He told me one thing, don't ever go out there, don't even think about it. But someone did." Brennan's jaw tightened. "Martinez, September 1991. The signatures had started appearing in groups, 7 of them arranged in circles. Command decided they needed ground verification. Martinez volunteered." What happened to him? Official story? Vehicle accident? He drove out to the coordinates, his Jeep rolled in a gully. He died from his injuries. Body recovered 3 days later. And the unofficial story. She was quiet for a long time. When she spoke, her voice was barely audible. Patterson was monitoring the cameras that night. Martinez had a radio. He was supposed to check in every 15 minutes. First 2 check-ins were normal. Third check-in, Patterson said Martinez sounded wrong, confused. He said he'd reached the coordinates but couldn't see anything unusual. Just desert. But then he said, she stopped. What did he say? He said, they're standing right in front of me. Why can't the camera see them? Brennan's hands were shaking. Patterson told him to return to the vehicle immediately. Martinez didn't respond. Patterson called again. And again, nothing. Then, at 03:47 hours, Martinez's radio keyed on. Someone, or something, was breathing into the mic. Slow, deliberate breaths, 15 per minute. That sound continued for 7 minutes. Then the radio went dead. My mouth was dry. Did they send a recovery team? At first light, found Martinez's Jeep exactly where he'd said he was going. The vehicle was undamaged, no signs of a rollover, no blood, but Martinez was gone. They found him 2 days later, 60 miles away, in the opposite direction from the facility. Dead? Yes, but not from injuries. The autopsy report was classified, but Patterson saw it before they sealed it. Martinez died of dehydration and exposure, like he'd been walking through the desert for days. But that was impossible. He'd only been missing for 48 hours. And the condition of his body, Patterson said it looked like he'd aged 30 years. I felt cold despite the diner's heat. They shut down the investigation after that, Brennan said. Reclassified everything, new protocols. Anyone assigned to monitor RZ-7N was told the signatures were equipment glitches and to stop reporting them. I lasted 3 more months before I requested a transfer. Patterson held on for another year. Most agents quit within 6 months. But they kept monitoring the zone. Of course they did. Whatever's out there, someone high up thinks it's important enough to keep watching. They just stopped trying to investigate it. Do you know what it is? Brennan looked at me with eyes that had seen too much. No, and I don't want to know, neither should you. She leaned forward. Agent Hartwell, why did you really call me? What are you planning to do? I didn't answer right away. Out the window, the desert stretched endlessly. Somewhere out there, 60 miles from anything, was a specific patch of ground where something appeared in the darkness. Something that had been appearing for at least 26 years. Something that had killed Martinez. I need to understand, I said finally. I need to know what's real. It's real, trust me, and that should be enough to make you walk away. I can't. It's like it's waiting for something, all these years, just standing there, watching. Why? What does it want? Maybe it doesn't want anything. Maybe it's just there. Some things don't have explanations, Hartwell. Some things just are. Do you really believe that? She didn't answer. Instead, she pulled a folded piece of paper from her pocket and slid it across the table. I wrote down everything I remember. Dates, details, things I never put in the official reports. If you're really going to pursue this, you should have the full picture. She stood up. But understand something. The people who tried to investigate this, Chen, Martinez, others whose names you'll never know, they either disappeared or spent the rest of their lives wishing they had. There's a reason the Bureau sealed those files. Some doors are meant to stay closed. Then why give me this? I gestured to the paper. Because I was you once, 26 years ago. and nobody told me the truth. Nobody warned me what it would cost. She pulled a $20 bill from her wallet and dropped it on the table. That should cover both of us. She walked toward the exit, then stopped and looked back. One more thing. If you do decide to go out there, and I'm begging you not to, remember what Martinez said. They're standing right in front of me. Why can't the camera see them? The cameras only show you thermal signatures, heat patterns. But what if that's not what they really are? What if the thermal image is just an echo, a shadow of something we can't actually see? What are you saying? I'm saying maybe the cameras aren't showing us what's there. Maybe they're showing us what's bleeding through from somewhere else. She left. Through the window, I watched her get in her Honda and drive away, heading south on 95 until she disappeared into the heat shimmer. I unfolded the paper she'd left. It was covered in handwritten notes, dates, times, coordinates. But at the bottom, in larger letters, she'd written, March 19th, August 23rd, December 14th. The appearances peak on these dates. Next occurrence, December 14th, 2019. If you're going to do something stupid, at least wait for a peak date. That's when it's strongest. That's when you'll see the truth. I pulled out my phone and checked the calendar. Today was December 10th, 2019. 4 days until the next peak date. I sat in that diner booth for another hour, drinking coffee and staring at Brennan's notes. The waitress refilled my cup 3 times without comment. The other customers left. New ones arrived. The desert sun tracked across the sky. I thought about Martinez, about walking into the desert and finding, 7 figures standing in a circle? Something that aged him 30 years and 48 hours? I thought about the archive, about all those agents who'd seen the signatures and been told to ignore them, about the files that had been sealed and buried in Sub-Level 2, about something that had been standing in the same spot for at least 26 years, watching, waiting, bleeding through from somewhere else. At 2:30 p.m., I paid my bill and walked out into the scorching desert afternoon. I got in my car and drove back to Reno. But I didn't go home. I went to the field office, told them I needed to access the auxiliary archive again. Said I'd found some discrepancies in the inventory that needed to be corrected. They gave me clearance without question. I took the service elevator down to Sub-Level 2. The archive room was exactly as I'd left it. Row upon row of file boxes. The RZ7N box was still in row 7, 3rd shelf up. I pulled it down and went through everything again. The log books, the photographs, the investigation report. I found what I was looking for in a file I'd overlooked before. Equipment requisition records from 1991. The investigation team had brought portable thermal imaging cameras, night vision scopes, and recording equipment. After Martinez's death, all that equipment had been logged as disposed of in the official records. But there was a handwritten note in the margin. Equipment relocated to Storage Unit 7, Building C, Las Vegas Field Office. Restricted access. Clearance Level 6+ required. I had Level 5 clearance, but I knew someone with Level 7. Back in my car, I made a call. Kane, it's Hartwell. I need a favor. Hartwell? Jesus, I haven't heard from you in years. How have you been? I need access to a restricted storage unit. Las Vegas Field Office. Building C, Unit 7. Silence on the other end. Then, that would require me to abuse my access credentials. Why would I do that? Because you know what I saw at the surveillance center wasn't a glitch. You've seen it too, haven't you? A long pause. Once, Kane said quietly. 2 years after you transferred, camera 14. Same coordinates. I reported it. They told me it was equipment malfunction and not to mention it again. But I remember the way you looked that night, Hartwell, and I've wondered ever since. I found the archive, the old surveillance logs. It's been appearing since at least 1987. They've been covering it up for decades. Shit, he exhaled. What's in storage unit 7? The equipment they used when they tried to investigate it in 991, before they sealed the files. And you want to? I want to finish what they started. Hartwell, this is insane. If you get caught, will you help me or not? Another long silence. I could hear him breathing, considering, weighing his career against whatever curiosity had been eating at him for the past 5 years. When? He finally asked. Tonight. You're really going to do this? 4 days from now is December 14th. That's when it appears most frequently, most clearly. If I'm going to understand what this is, that's my window. And what exactly are you planning to do? I'm going out there, to the coordinates. I'm going to see it for myself. Like Martinez did. Yes, Martinez died, Hartwell. I know. And you're going anyway. Yes. Kane was quiet. Then, Building C closes at 1800 hours. Security makes rounds every 2 hours after that. If you're there at 2000 hours, I can remotely disable the alarm on Unit 7 for exactly 10 minutes. That's all I can give you. That's enough. Hartwell, don't get yourself killed. I've had enough nightmares about that place. He hung up. I sat in the parking lot of the Reno field office, watching the sun sink toward the western mountains. In 4 days, I was going to drive out into the Nevada desert and stand at coordinates 38.7842 N, 117.3391 W. Stand where something had been standing for 26 years. Stand where Martinez had died. I pulled out Brennan's notes and read them again. All the dates, all the details, all the warnings. At the very bottom, in small letters, she'd written one more thing. If you see them, don't try to touch them. Don't speak to them. And whatever you do, don't let them see you see them. I didn't understand what that meant. I wouldn't understand until it was too late. The equipment was older than I expected. Night vision scopes with cracked rubber eyepieces. Thermal imaging cameras in battered cases. Portable radio transceivers with corroded battery terminals. All of it packed in foam-lined boxes labeled with dates from 91. I'd made it into storage unit 7 with 3 minutes to spare. Kane had been as good as his word. The alarm was disabled, the lock disengaged. I'd loaded everything I could carry into 2 duffel bags and was back in my car before security made their 2000 hours rounds. Now, 3 days later, the equipment was spread across my apartment floor. I'd spent 72 hours testing every piece, replacing batteries, cleaning contacts, making sure it all still worked. Most of it did. The thermal camera was temperamental but functional. The night vision scopes were scratched but serviceable. The radio transceivers powered on, though I had no one to communicate with. I'd also acquired some equipment of my own. A GPS unit, extra batteries, water, 5 gallons of it, food bars, a first aid kit, flares, a satellite phone as backup, and a gun. I checked out a Glock 19 from the FBI armory claiming I needed to requalify at the range. I had no idea if a gun would be useful against whatever was out there. Probably not. But it made me feel slightly less helpless. Outside my apartment window, Reno glowed against the night. December 13th, 11:47 p.m. 13 minutes until December 14th. 13 minutes until the peak date. I'd called in sick for the next 3 days, told them I had the flu. They didn't question it. I had 2 years of unused sick leave built up. I'd written a letter, sealed it in an envelope. Left it on my kitchen table addressed to my supervisor. If I didn't come back, if someone eventually came looking for me, they'd find it. In the letter, I'd explained everything. The thermal signatures, the archive, Brennan's warnings, the coordinates. If I disappeared like Martinez, at least someone would know where I'd gone and why. At 11:52 p.m., my phone rang. Unknown number. I answered. Agent Hartwell. A woman's voice, not Brennan. Older. Authority in the tone. Yes, who is this? My name is Dr. Eleanor Vance. I'm calling from Washington. I understand you've been researching Restricted Zone 7N. My blood went cold. How did you? We monitor access to certain archived materials. Your clearance was flagged when you pulled the RZ7N files from Sublevel 2. She paused. We also noticed equipment was removed from Storage Unit 7 in Las Vegas 3 days ago. Shit, they'd been watching. Of course they'd been watching. I can explain. I don't need explanations, Agent Hartwell. I need you to listen very carefully. Do not go out to those coordinates. I don't care what you think you saw, what you think you know. That area is restricted for reasons that are well beyond your clearance level. Someone needs to investigate it properly. You've been covering this up for decades. We've been protecting people for decades. There's a difference. Her voice was hard. Agent Martinez wasn't the only person who died out there. He was just the only one whose death we couldn't completely hide. There have been others. Contractors, researchers, even military personnel. Anyone who gets too close to that site either disappears or comes back. Changed. Changed how? In ways I'm not authorized to discuss. But take my word for it, Agent Hartwell. The cost of knowledge about RZ7N is too high. Walk away. Destroy the equipment you took. Forget everything you've read. I can't do that. Then you're a fool. She was quiet for a moment. You think you're seeking truth, understanding. But what if the truth is that some phenomena should remain unexplained? What if understanding it would be worse than ignorance? You're asking me to live with not knowing. I'm asking you to live. Period. Another pause. I was stationed at the surveillance center in 1982. I was there when we first detected the signatures. I was part of the initial investigation. I'm one of the only people from that original team who's still alive. Do you understand what I'm telling you? I didn't answer. At 0300 hours tomorrow morning, Dr. Vance said, a security team will arrive at your apartment. They will confiscate the equipment you stole and escort you to a debriefing. You will be placed on administrative leave pending an investigation into your unauthorized access of classified materials. You will not be criminally charged, but your career with the Bureau will likely be over. That's the cost of your curiosity. Consider yourself lucky. What if I'm not there when they arrive? Then they'll find you, and the consequences will be much worse. Her voice softened slightly. Agent Hartwell, I'm trying to save your life, please. Let this go. She hung up. I stood there holding the phone. Outside, Reno sparkled in the darkness. Ordinary people living ordinary lives, unaware that 60 miles away, something impossible stood in the desert. Watching, waiting. I looked at the equipment on my floor. Looked at the gun on my table. Looked at the clock. 11:58 p.m. 2 minutes until December 14th. 3 hours until the security team arrived. I made my decision. I grabbed the duffel bags, the GPS, the water, the gun. Ran down to my car, threw everything in the trunk. I was on Highway 95, heading south toward Las Vegas by 12:03 a.m. The roads were empty. Just me and the desert darkness. My headlights carved a tunnel through the night, illuminating nothing but asphalt and sand. I drove fast, faster than I should have. If the security team realized I wasn't at my apartment, they'd start looking for me. They'd check traffic cameras, track my GPS. I had maybe a 2-hour head start. It would have to be enough. At 1:47 a.m., I turned off Highway 95 onto a dirt access road. No signs, no markings. Just a gap in the scrub brush that I'd identified using satellite imagery. The road, if you could call it that, was rough. My sedan wasn't built for this terrain. The suspension groaned. Rocks pinged against the undercarriage. I kept going. According to my GPS, the coordinates were 17 miles from the highway. I'd covered 9 miles when the road simply ended. Beyond this point, it was pure desert. Impassable for a vehicle. I'd have to walk the last 8 miles. I parked, killed the engine, and sat in the darkness. 2:23 a.m. Outside, the desert was absolutely silent. No wind, no animals, nothing. I grabbed one duffel bag, couldn't carry both. I'd take the thermal camera, one night vision scope, the radio, water, and the gun. The rest would stay in the car. Before I got out, I used the satellite phone to send a single text message to Kane. If you don't hear from me by noon, check coordinates 38.7842 N 117.3391 W and tell them everything. I didn't wait for a reply. I shouldered the bag and stepped out into the desert night. The temperature had dropped, maybe 40 degrees. My breath misted in the air. Above me, stars filled the sky. Thousands of them. Impossibly bright out here away from any light pollution. The Milky Way stretched across the darkness like a wound. I activated the GPS and started walking. The desert floor was rough. Rocks and sand and patches of hardy scrub brush that grabbed at my ankles. I used a flashlight to pick my way forward, moving as quickly as I dared. 1 mile, 2 miles, 3. My watch read 3:41 a.m., 4 miles. I stopped to drink water. Checked the GPS. 4 miles to go. I was making good time. That's when I noticed the silence. It wasn't just quiet, it was utterly soundless. Not even the scuff of my own footsteps seemed to carry. The desert had swallowed all sound. I turned on the thermal camera, let it warm up for a minute, then scanned the area ahead. Empty, just the cold, blue-purple gradient of lifeless desert. I kept walking. 5 miles. 3:58 a.m., 6 miles. The stars were starting to fade. Dawn was still hours away, but something about the darkness felt different, thinner, like the night itself was growing transparent. 7 miles. 4:23 a.m. I stopped, checked the GPS, 1 mile to the coordinates. I pulled out the night vision scope, scanned the horizon. Nothing. Just desert stretching endlessly in all directions. I checked the thermal camera again. And there it was, a heat signature, human-shaped, standing motionless approximately half a mile ahead, exactly where it should be. My hands were shaking. I steadied the camera, zoomed in. The signature was clear, perfect. A vertical column of heat rising from the desert floor. The breathing pattern was visible, that slow, rhythmic expansion and contraction, 15 breaths per minute. I was close enough now that I should be able to see it with the naked eye. But when I looked up from the camera, there was nothing there. Just empty darkness. Brennan's words echoed in my mind. What if the thermal image is just an echo, a shadow of something we can't actually see? I kept walking. Slower now. Every sense alert. Half a mile became a quarter mile. Quarter mile became 800 feet. I stopped at 600 feet. Close enough to see clearly with the thermal camera. Not so close that I couldn't run if I needed to. I set up position behind a cluster of rocks. Unpacked the equipment. Thermal camera on a small tripod. Night vision scope. radio. Gun within easy reach. I looked through the thermal camera. The signature stood perfectly still. Same posture it always had on the surveillance feeds. Upright. Human proportioned. Not moving except for that subtle breathing pattern. But now I was close enough to see details the surveillance center's cameras couldn't capture. The heat pattern wasn't uniform. There were variations. Cooler areas that could have been clothing. Warmer concentrations in the core and head regions. It looked exactly like a thermal image of a living person. I switched to the night vision scope. Nothing. Just empty desert. I looked with my naked eyes. Still nothing. But the thermal camera showed it standing right there, clear as day. My heart was hammering. I pulled out the radio, turned it on. Set it to the frequency Martinez had used in '91. I'd found it in the archive files. The radio crackled with static. I adjusted the squelch. And then I heard it. Breathing. Not from the radio. From the desert. From the direction of the coordinates. Slow. Measured. 15 breaths per minute. I grabbed the thermal camera. The signature was still there, still motionless. But as I watched, it moved. One step forward. The breathing sound grew louder. Another step. I looked through the night vision scope. Saw nothing. Looked with my eyes. Still nothing. But the thermal camera showed it walking toward me. Slowly, deliberately. And I could hear it breathing. I should have run. Every instinct screamed at me to run. But I was paralyzed, frozen, watching through the thermal camera as it approached. 200 feet. The breathing was definitely coming from that direction now. I could pinpoint it. But there was nothing there. Nothing visible. 100 feet. I could see the thermal signature so clearly now. Could see the rise and fall of what should have been a chest. Could see the heat variation that suggested arms, legs, a head. 75 feet. The breathing sound changed. Became aware. Like it knew I was there. 50 feet. My hand found the gun. I didn't even remember reaching for it. 25 feet. The thermal signature stopped. We stood there, me and this invisible thing, separated by 25 feet of desert darkness. The breathing sound stopped. Complete silence. I lowered the thermal camera, looked with my naked eyes at the space where the signature was standing. Empty. Nothing there. I raised the camera again. The signature had moved. It was now standing 15 feet away. I hadn't heard it move, hadn't seen it move. But it had closed the distance while I'd looked away, and it had changed position. It was no longer facing forward. It was facing me, looking directly at me. I remembered Brennan's final warning. Don't let them see you see them. Too late. The breathing sound returned, louder, closer, right in front of me. I could feel it. Feel the displacement of air. Feel warmth that had no source. Through the thermal camera, I watched as the signature raised one arm, reached toward me. The breathing grew faster. 20 breaths per minute. 30. The radio crackled to life. A voice came through the static. Male, distorted, familiar. Why did you come here? I couldn't speak, couldn't move. The voice continued. We've been waiting for someone to see, to understand. But you don't understand, do you? What are you? I finally whispered. The radio crackled. The voice laughed. It wasn't a human laugh. We're what's left, what bleeds through. We're the space between here and nowhere. Through the thermal camera, I could see the signature was now inches away. The raised arm extended toward my face. You wanted to know, the voice said. So now you'll know. Now you'll see everything. The thermal signature touched me. I felt nothing. But the world changed. Suddenly, I could see them. Not just the one, all of them. 7 figures standing in a circle around me. Not human, not exactly. Their shapes were wrong. Proportions that didn't make sense. They flickered, like they couldn't quite maintain form in this reality. They were speaking. All of them. Their voices overlapped, creating a sound that wasn't sound, a frequency that bypassed my ears and went straight into my brain. See what we see. See where we are, see what you are. The desert was gone. I was standing in the same physical location, but I could see through it. Through the rock and sand, down into the earth, miles down. And there, buried deep beneath the Nevada desert, I saw it. A facility, vast, ancient, not built by human hands. And in that facility, something was waking up. The figures around me weren't ghosts, weren't aliens, weren't anything I had a name for. They were warnings, echoes of something that had tried to come through before. Shadows cast by a light that hadn't turned on yet. But it was turning on now. I could feel it. Feel the thing beneath the desert beginning to stir. Beginning to remember. Beginning to reach up toward the surface world. The figures spoke again. Their voices unified now. We tried to stop it. We failed. We're trapped between here and there, between is and was. We've been waiting for someone to come, someone to see, someone to warn. Warn who? I managed to ask. Everyone. No one. It doesn't matter. It's too late. It's been too late since they built the first camera, since they started watching. Every time someone watches, it gets stronger. Every time someone comes, it learns. It learned from us. It learned from Martinez. Now it will learn from you. The desert snapped back into focus. The facility was gone, but I could still feel it below me, pulsing, breathing. The figures began to fade. Wait, I said. How do I stop it? You can't, the voice said from the radio. You can only choose. Choose what? Stay and become like us. Between, watching, warning, or run and forget. Seal it away in your mind where it can't hurt you, where it can't use you. And if I run, what happens? It keeps growing, keeps learning. One day, maybe soon, maybe 1,000 years from now, it will be strong enough. And it will come through, and your world will become like the place we're trapped in. Between. Neither here nor there. The thermal signature was pulling away now, moving back to its original position. We're sorry, the voice said. Sorry you had to see. Sorry you had to know. But maybe you're different. Maybe you can do what we couldn't. What's that? Make them listen. The radio went dead. The figures were gone. I stood alone in the desert, holding a thermal camera that showed nothing but empty sand. The sun was rising, pink and gold spreading across the eastern horizon. I looked at my watch. 5:47 a.m. I'd lost 90 minutes. 90 minutes I couldn't account for. My hands were shaking so violently I dropped the camera. I looked down at the coordinates where I'd been standing. The sand was wrong. Disturbed. Like something had been there, like something had moved through it, but there was something else. Footprints, not mine. Too small. Too many. 7 sets of footprints arranged in a circle. I backed away, grabbed my equipment, started walking, then running. I reached my car at 7:23 a.m., threw the equipment in the trunk, got in, started the engine. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. I drove back to the highway, back toward Reno, back toward civilization. My phone had 17 missed calls. 10 from the FBI field office. 7 from numbers I didn't recognize. 1 voicemail from Dr. Eleanor Vance. Agent Hartwell, this is your last warning. We're tracking your phone. We know where you went. If you went to the coordinates, if you saw anything, you need to come in immediately. There are procedures, protocols. We can help you, but you need to trust us. Call me back." I didn't call back. I drove to my apartment. The security team had already been there. My door was open. The place had been searched. My letter was gone from the kitchen table. I didn't care. I packed a bag, essentials only, left my FBI credentials on the counter, left my gun, left everything that connected me to the bureau. I got back in my car and drove. I'm still driving. That was 6 years ago. I don't know where I am anymore. Somewhere in the Midwest. I've been moving constantly, never staying in one place longer than a few weeks. I tried to forget. I tried to seal it away like the voice had said, but I can't. Because I still see them, not with thermal cameras, with my naked eyes. They're everywhere. Standing on street corners, in parking lots, in the backgrounds of photographs. 7 figures flickering, trapped between. And sometimes, late at night, I hear the breathing. 15 breaths per minute. I tried to warn people. I went to the media, to scientists, to anyone who would listen. No one believed me. Some thought I was crazy. Others thought it was a hoax. The FBI officially listed me as having had a mental breakdown. Dr. Vance gave interviews explaining that extended isolation at remote facilities can cause psychological stress. They painted me as a cautionary tale, but I know the truth. Something is underneath the Nevada desert. Something old. Something vast. Something that's been waiting for a very long time. And it's getting stronger. I can feel it every day, like a pressure building, like something pressing against the thin membrane between this world and somewhere else. The cameras are still watching. New agents are working the night shift at the Surveillance Coordination Center. Seeing the thermal signatures, reporting them, being told they're glitches. Each time someone watches, it learns a little more. Each time someone goes to those coordinates, it grows a little stronger. Martinez was the first. I was the second. But I won't be the last. Eventually, someone else will find the archive. Someone else will read the logs. Someone else will decide they need to understand. And when they do, when they stand at coordinates 38.7842N, 117.3391W, and see what I saw, they'll have the same choice I had. Stay and become a warning. Or run and live with the knowledge. I chose to run, but I'm still there, part of me. Trapped in that moment when I could see through the desert, down into the impossible facility beneath. I still see it sometimes, late at night, when I close my eyes. The thing in the dark. Waiting. Growing. Learning. One day, it won't need cameras to watch us. It won't need us to come to it. It will be strong enough to come to us. And on that day, the 7 figures will finally be free from the space between, because we'll all be trapped there with them. I'm writing this in a motel room in Nebraska, or maybe Kansas. I've lost track. Tomorrow, I'll move again. Keep running, keep trying to warn people who won't listen. But if you're reading this, if somehow this account finds its way to you, I need you to understand something. If you work for the FBI, if you're ever assigned to monitor Restricted Zone 7N, if you ever see a thermal signature at coordinates 38.7842N, 117.3391W, don't investigate. Don't go there. Don't try to understand. Some things should remain unexplained. Some doors should stay closed. Some signals should never be answered. I answered, and now I'll spend the rest of my life listening to the breathing. 15 breaths per minute. Always 15. Even when I'm not near any cameras, even when there's nothing there, I still hear it, and I think it hears me too. The elevator descends with a mechanical groan that echoes up the shaft. 15 seconds of darkness and the smell of old grease before the doors shutter open onto sublevel 3. I'm Agent Michael Torres. I've worked in the FBI Reno field office for 8 years, but I've only been assigned to archive duty for the past 3 months. Night shift, 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. Solo rotation. Most agents see archive assignment as punishment. A dead-end job for people who screwed up or pissed off the wrong supervisor. Maybe they're right. I don't talk about why I'm down here, and nobody asks. Sublevel 3 is the deepest basement level in the Reno field office. The building has 3 floors above ground and 3 below. Most people don't even know Sublevel 3 exists. It's not on the public floor plans. The elevator button is locked behind a key panel. Down here, the FBI stores physical case files from closed investigations dating back to the 1970s. Everything's been digitized, of course, but federal regulations require maintaining hard copies for 75 years. So here they sit, thousands of boxes, millions of pages, gathering dust in climate-controlled silence. My job is simple: inventory verification. I work through 1 section per shift, checking box labels against the database, confirming everything is where it should be. If I find discrepancies, I log them. If files are damaged, I flag them for preservation. It's mindless work, exactly what I need. The hallway from the elevator is 30 feet long. Concrete walls painted institutional beige. Fluorescent lights every 8 feet, buzzing faintly. The air down here is kept at exactly 64 degrees and 40% humidity. Optimal for paper preservation. Terrible for human comfort. I'm wearing a jacket. After 3 months, I've learned to dress in layers. At the end of the hallway is a heavy steel door with a card reader. I swipe my badge. The lock clicks. The door swings open with a hydraulic hiss. The archive room is vast. 80 feet wide, 200 feet deep. Row after row of industrial shelving units, each one 20 feet tall, stretching back into fluorescent-lit infinity. The shelves are packed with identical gray file boxes, each labeled with case numbers and dates. There are no windows down here, no external walls. We're buried beneath 50 feet of concrete and earth. The only sound is the ambient hum of the HVAC system and the buzz of fluorescent lights. I'm completely alone. I walk to the workstation near the entrance. A metal desk with a computer terminal, a logbook, and a cup holder that currently holds my thermos of coffee. Black, no sugar. I'll need it to stay awake for the next 8 hours. I log into the terminal and pull up tonight's assignment. Section 7B, rows 23 through 30. Approximately 400 boxes to verify. The time is 11:13 p.m. I grab my inventory scanner and clipboard and head into the rows. The shelving units are arranged in a grid pattern, creating long corridors between each row. The fluorescent lights are mounted on the ceiling directly above each corridor, but the spaces between shelves remain shadowed. When you're standing in one of these corridors, you can see about 60 feet in either direction before the perspective narrows to darkness. Row 23 is toward the back of the room. I walk past rows 1 through 22, my footsteps echoing on the concrete floor. The sound carries in the emptiness. Each step seems too loud. I reach row 23 and start scanning. Box 23-001, case file, 1978 LV3847, verified. Box 23-002, case file, 1978 LV3851, verified. Box 23003, case file, 1978 LV3852, verified. The work is rhythmic. Scan the barcode. Check the screen. Confirm the label matches the database. Move to the next box. I can process about 50 boxes per hour if I stay focused. By midnight, I've completed row 23 and moved on to row 24. The coffee is helping. I'm alert, focused. The isolation doesn't bother me anymore. After 3 months, I've gotten used to the silence. At 12:47 a.m., I notice something odd. I'm scanning box 24-156 when the database returns an error. File not found in current location. I check the label again. Case file 1979 SF4821. The barcode scans correctly, but according to the database, this box should be in row 31, not row 24. I make a note on my clipboard. Misfiled box. Happens sometimes. Previous shift worker probably grabbed the wrong box when retrieving something and put it back in the wrong spot. I'll move it to the correct location during my rounds. I continue scanning. At 1:15 a.m., I find another misfiled box. This one should be in row 18. At 1:33 a.m., another. Should be in row 9. 3 misfiled boxes in less than an hour. That's unusual. The archive system is pretty tight. Most shifts I might find 1 misfiled box, if that. I log all 3 in the discrepancy report and keep working. By 2 a.m., I've completed rows 24 and 25. I take a break, walking back to the workstation to refill my coffee and update the log. The archive room is exactly as I left it. Rows of shelves, boxes in perfect alignment. Silence. I sit at the desk and type up my progress notes. 3 misfiled boxes found and logged. Otherwise, no issues. I'll relocate them after I finish the full section scan. I drain my coffee cup and stand up to head back to row 26. That's when I hear it. A soft scraping sound, like cardboard sliding against metal. I stop, listen. The sound comes again. Definitely from inside the archive room. Somewhere among the rows. I walk slowly toward the sound. It seems to be coming from the left side of the room. Maybe row 10 or 11. I reach row 10 and look down the corridor between the shelves. Nothing. Just boxes lined up neatly on both sides. The scraping sound has stopped. I stand there for a moment listening. The HVAC hums. The lights buzz. Nothing else. Must have been the building settling. Old structures make noise, especially at night when the temperature drops and metal contracts. I go back to row 26 and continue scanning. At 2:34 a.m., I find another misfiled box. At 2:51 a.m., 2 more. At 3:08 a.m., 3 more. That's 9 misfiled boxes in total, all found in rows 23 through 26. All supposed to be in completely different sections of the archive. This isn't random. Something's wrong. I return to the workstation and pull up the access logs. According to the database, I'm the only person who's been in the archive room for the past 72 hours. The day shift worker before me logged out at 11:02 p.m. 3 days ago. Nobody else has swiped in since then. So, who's been moving these boxes? I look at the timestamps for when each misfiled box was last scanned in its correct location. The most recent was box 24-156, which was verified in row 31 exactly 6 days ago during regular inventory. 6 days ago, before I started my shift tonight. But it's in row 24 now. I sit back in my chair and think. There are a few possibilities. 1. The previous shift worker moved boxes and didn't log it properly. 2. There's a glitch in the database causing incorrect location data. 3. Someone accessed the archive room without swiping their badge, which shouldn't be possible given the security locks. None of these explanations feel right. I decide to physically verify one of the misfiled boxes. I grab box 24-156 and carry it to row 31, where it's supposed to be located. I find the spot. There's a gap on the shelf. Box 31-156 is missing. and in its place is exactly where box 24-156 should fit. So the boxes were definitely moved, physically moved from their correct locations to incorrect ones. But by who? I place box 24-156 back in its correct spot on row 31. Then I walk to row 24 to see what should actually be in the position where I found the misfiled box. The spot is empty. No box at all. I check the database. Box 24-156, the one that should have been here, is listed as Case File 1979 LV4156, which I haven't scanned yet tonight. I search the surrounding boxes. Not there. I expand my search to the entire row 24. Can't find it. I feel a cold knot forming in my stomach. A box is missing from row 24, and the box that was in its place is the exact box that was missing from row 31. Like they were swapped. But that doesn't make sense. Why would someone come into the archive in the middle of the night, move boxes around randomly, then leave without logging their access? Unless they didn't want their access logged. I walk back to the workstation and check the security camera feeds. There are 4 cameras in the archive room. 1 covering the entrance, 1 covering the workstation area, and 2 positioned to sweep the main floor space between the rows. I pull up tonight's footage starting from 11 p.m. when I arrived. The entrance camera shows me swiping in at 11:13 p.m. Nobody else enters after that. The timestamp is currently 3:41 a.m. Just me for the past 4.5 hours. I check the workstation camera. Shows me sitting at the desk, walking into the rows, coming back for coffee. Normal activity. No one else visible. I check the 2 floor cameras. The first one shows the left side of the room, covering rows 1 through 15. The second shows the right side, covering rows 16 through 30. I scroll through the footage, watch myself moving between the rows, scanning boxes, taking notes. At 2:47 a.m., I see something. In the background of the right side camera feed, in the far corner near row 30, there's movement. I pause the footage, rewind, watch it again. There, a shadow. Something moving between row 29 and row 30. I zoom in on that section of the frame. The resolution is grainy, but I can make out a shape. Human-sized. Moving slowly along the corridor between the shelves. But I was in row 26 at that time. I check the timestamp. Yes, I'm clearly visible in row 26 scanning boxes. My back is to the camera, which means someone else was in the archive room. The shape moves out of frame. I fast forward, trying to spot it again. At 2:53 a.m., it reappears briefly in row 28, then disappears again. At 3:01 a.m., it's in row 24, right where I found the first misfiled box. I watch as the shape reaches up toward a shelf. The angle is wrong, and the resolution is too poor to see clearly, but it looks like it's moving a box. Then it walks away, out of frame. I scan through the rest of the footage. The shape doesn't reappear. My heart is pounding. I stand up and look out at the archive room. Rows of shelves stretching back into fluorescent-lit distance. Silent, still. Someone was in here with me, moving boxes while I was working in a different section. Someone who didn't swipe their badge to enter, which means they were already inside when I arrived. Which means they've been hiding in here for at least 4 hours. I reach for my phone to call security, then stop. If someone's hiding in here, calling security might spook them. They could destroy evidence or attack before help arrives. The response time from the security office on the ground floor is at least 5 minutes. Probably longer at this hour. I'm alone down here. The elevator is the only exit, and to reach it, I'd have to cross the entire archive room to get to the entrance. Whoever this is, they're somewhere in the rows, between me and the only way out. I sit back down slowly, Try to think. Option 1. Run for the elevator. Risk whoever this is catching me before I can escape. Option 2. Confront them. But I'm not armed. Archive duty doesn't require carrying a weapon. Option 3. Call security and hope they arrive before anything happens. I pick up the desk phone, dial security. It rings once, twice, 3 times. No answer. I hang up and try again. Still no answer. That's wrong. Security desk is manned 24 hours. Someone should always answer. I try my cell phone instead. Dial the security extension. The call won't go through. No signal. I'm too deep underground. I'm truly alone. I set the phone down carefully and stand up. Listen. The HVAC hums. The fluorescent lights buzz. And underneath those sounds, very faintly, I hear something else. Breathing. Not my own. Someone else's. Slow and steady, coming from somewhere among the rows. I grab a heavy flashlight from the desk drawer. It's not much, but it's something. The weight of it in my hand is reassuring. I walk slowly toward the rows, toward the sound of breathing. It's coming from the right side of the room, somewhere around row 20 or 21. I move quietly, stepping carefully to minimize the echo of my footsteps. Row 18. Row 19. Row 20. The breathing is louder now. Definitely coming from row 21. I reach the entrance to the corridor and look down it. Empty. Just boxes on shelves receding into the distance, but the breathing continues. Close. Very close. I take a step into the corridor, another step. The breathing stops. Complete silence. I stand perfectly still, every muscle tense, flashlight raised. Nothing moves. Nothing makes a sound. Then, from behind me, I hear a voice. "You shouldn't be here." I spin around. There's a man standing in the main aisle between the rows. He's wearing dark clothing, pants, jacket, gloves. His face is partially hidden by shadows. "Who are you?" I demand, raising the flashlight like a weapon. "This is a restricted area. Identify yourself." The man doesn't move, doesn't speak, just stands there watching me. "I'm calling security," I say, even though I know the phone won't work. The man tilts his head slightly. "The security line doesn't work down here after midnight. You should know that." His voice is flat, emotionless, like he's stating a fact rather than making a threat. "How did you get in here?" I ask. "I didn't get in. I've always been here." That doesn't make sense. The access logs show what they're programmed to show. They don't show everything. He takes a step toward me. "You're not supposed to find the boxes. You're supposed to verify them and move on. That's the job." "What are you talking about? What boxes?" "The ones that move. The ones that are never where they should be. The ones that have been moving for 30 years. Another step closer. "You're the first one who's actually noticed. The first one in a long time." My grip tightens on the flashlight. "I'm going to need you to leave now, or I'm reporting this." The man stops, looks at me with an expression I can't read. "You can't report what you don't understand. And you don't understand what this place is, what's really down here." He gestures at the rows of shelves. "These aren't just files. They're records, proof, evidence of things the Bureau wants buried. And some of those things, they don't stay buried." "You're not making sense. Who are you? Are you with the FBI?" He laughs. It's a hollow sound. "I was, a long time ago. Now I'm just maintenance, making sure things stay in order, or at least making sure people think they're in order. Maintenance doesn't have access to sub-level 3. Official maintenance doesn't. but someone has to keep track of the boxes that move on their own. Boxes don't move on their own, don't they? He points toward row 24. Then explain how you found 9 boxes in the wrong locations tonight. Explain how those boxes have been moving every night for decades. Explain how some of them end up in rows that don't exist in the database. I don't have an explanation. The man nods like he expected my silence. You'll see. Keep working, keep scanning. Eventually, you'll find one of the other boxes. The special ones. The ones that aren't supposed to exist at all. What are you talking about? The archive isn't just storage, Torres. It's containment. Some of these files, they're not just records of investigations. They're the investigations themselves, still active, still dangerous, still waiting. He turns and walks toward row 30. I follow him, but by the time I round the corner, he's gone. I run down the corridor, checking each cross aisle. No sign of him. I reach the end of the row and look in every direction. Empty. He vanished. I stand there, breathing hard, flashlight beam cutting through the shadows, and I realize something. The man knew my name. He called me Torres. But I never told him my name, and he said the boxes have been moving for 30 years, which means whatever's happening down here, it didn't start with me. I check my watch, 4:17 a.m. Less than 3 hours left in my shift. I go back to the workstation and sit down. My hands are shaking. I pour more coffee, but it's gone cold. I pull up the database and search for any personnel records matching the description of the man I just saw. Dark clothing, older, possibly former FBI. There are hundreds of retired agents, too many to narrow down without more information. I try a different search. Sub-Level 3 archive access logs, historical records, going back 30 years. The database churns for a moment, then returns results. Pages and pages of access logs, hundreds of names, different shifts, different years. I start scrolling through them, looking for patterns. And I find one. Every few months, sometimes more frequently, there's a cluster of unusual activity. Multiple access entries logged in the same night, but from different badge IDs, like several people were entering and leaving the archive room repeatedly. But here's what's strange. The badge IDs don't correspond to any active personnel files. They're listed as deactivated or archived in the system. Dead badges. Credentials that should no longer work. Yet they're accessing Sub-Level 3. I find entries going back to 1989. The pattern repeats every few months, sometimes as many as 6 or 7 deactivated badges accessing the archive in a single night. And always between midnight and 5 a.m. I cross-reference the deactivated badge IDs with personnel records. The names that come up are all former FBI employees. Most retired, some transferred, a few listed as deceased. One name appears more frequently than others. Agent Harold Finch. Badge access logged 847 times between 1989 and 2003. Status, deceased, 2003. A dead man's badge has been used to access Sub-Level 3 hundreds of times over 14 years. I'm about to search for Harold Finch's personnel file when I hear it again. That scraping sound. Cardboard on metal. Louder this time. More deliberate. Coming from row 7. I stand up slowly, grab the flashlight, walk toward row 7. The sound continues. Rhythmic. Like someone systematically pulling boxes off a shelf and setting them down. I reach the row and look down the corridor. At the far end, about 50 feet away, I see boxes on the floor. 4 or 5 of them. Pulled from the shelf and stacked in the middle of the corridor. But there's no one there. No person. No movement. Just the boxes, sitting in a neat pile. The scraping sound stops. I walk slowly toward the boxes, flashlight beam steady on them. As I get closer, I can see they're all from the same case series, 1991 RN files. Reno, Office Investigations from 91. I reach the pile and kneel down. Check the labels. Case file Huffman RN 0847. Case file A1 RN 0849. Case file 1 RN 0851. Case file 91 RN 0853. Case file and A1 RN 0855, odd numbers only. Sequential odd numbers. I look up at the shelf where they came from. There are gaps where these boxes should be, but the gaps aren't random. They're evenly spaced, exactly where odd-numbered boxes would be in a sequential series. Someone, or something, pulled only the odd-numbered boxes from this sequence. But why? I open the first box, 1991 RN 0847. Inside are case files, reports, photographs. Standard investigation materials. The case involves a missing person from 1991, a clerk who disappeared from the Reno field office. I skim through the reports. The clerk, a woman named Patricia Morrison, was last seen leaving work on March 14, 1991. Her car was found in the employee parking lot. No signs of foul play. No body ever recovered. The investigation went cold after 6 months. Status unsolved. I open the second box, 1991 RN 0849. Another missing person, a maintenance worker named Robert Chen. Disappeared May 22, 1991. Last seen entering the building for a night shift. Never seen again. I open the third box, 1991 RN 0851. Another one. Security guard James Walker. Disappeared July 8, 91. Fourth box, 1991 RN 0853. IT specialist Karen Ruiz. Disappeared September 3, 1991. Fifth box, 1991 RN 0855. Archivist Harold Finch. Disappeared November 17, 1991. 5 people. All FBI employees at the Reno field office. All disappeared over the course of 8 months in 1991. All last seen inside this building. And all cases remained unsolved. I sit back on my heels, staring at the boxes. Harold Finch. The archivist whose deactivated badge has been used to access Sublevel 3 hundreds of times. He disappeared from this building in 1991, and according to the access logs, his badge was first used posthumously to enter this archive room in 92, 1 year after he vanished. My watch reads 5:03 a.m. Almost 2 hours left in my shift. I should call this in, report what I've found, let someone else handle it. But the phone doesn't work down here, and I'm starting to think that's not an accident. I stand up and carry one of the boxes back to the workstation, set it on the desk, and start reading through the full case file. Harold Finch was 47 when he disappeared. 22 years with the Bureau, the last 15 spent managing the archive system in Reno. Described by colleagues as meticulous, private, dedicated to his work. On November 17, 1991, Finch logged into Sublevel 3 at 11:23 p.m. for his regular night shift. Security cameras showed him entering. He was scheduled to work until 7 o'clock a.m. At 7:15 a.m., when he hadn't logged out or responded to calls, security went down to check on him. The archive room was empty. Finch was gone. His jacket was still at the workstation. His coffee cup was half full. His terminal was logged in, showing he'd been in the middle of verifying box 18445. But Finch himself had vanished. The building was locked down. Every room searched, every exit checked. Security footage reviewed. Finch never left Sublevel 3. The elevator camera showed him entering the archive room. It never showed him leaving. The investigation concluded he must have found a way to bypass the cameras and exit through a service corridor. But no such corridor existed. Sublevel 3 has only one entrance: the elevator. The case was never solved. Finch was declared deceased in 1998, 7 years after his disappearance. And yet, his badge continued to access this room 847 times. I close the file and look out at the archive room. Rows and rows of shelves, thousands of boxes. Somewhere in here there's an answer. I pull up the database and search for box 184445, the box Finch was verifying when he disappeared. The search returns a location: row 18, position 445. I grab my flashlight and walk to row 18. Find position 445. The box is there. Case file 1983 RN 2234. Exactly where it should be. I pull it from the shelf and carry it back to the workstation. Inside the box, I find something that doesn't belong. Mixed in with the 1983 case files, there's a handwritten note. Recent. The paper isn't yellowed. The ink is fresh. The note reads, "They're still here. All of them. We never left. We're in the spaces between the boxes, in the gaps between the files, in the moments when you're not looking. The archive keeps us. We keep the archive. Don't look for us. Don't try to understand. Just do your job and leave when your shift ends. That's how you stay safe. H.F. Harold Finch." The note is dated 3 days ago, the day before I started my current shift rotation. My hands are shaking as I set the note down. A dead man left me a message 3 days ago. I hear footsteps behind me. I turn around. Harold Finch is standing there. I know it's him because his face matches the photograph in his personnel file. Same gray hair, same wire-rimmed glasses, same FBI windbreaker. Except he looks exactly as he did in 991. He hasn't aged a day. "You found the boxes," he says. His voice is hollow, distant, like it's coming from far away. I can't speak, can't move. "I tried to warn you," Finch continues. "The note. I left it where you'd find it. But you kept looking. You found the others. Patricia, Robert, James, Karen, all of us. You're dead," I managed to say. "You've been dead for 30 years. Have I?" He looks down at himself, as if checking. I suppose that's technically true, but death doesn't work the same way down here. The archive doesn't let us leave. That's impossible. Is it? You've seen the boxes move. You've seen the access logs. You've seen me. He steps closer. The archive is alive, Torres. It's been alive since they built it in 1979. It's not just a storage facility. It's something else. Something that feeds on information, on secrets, on people who spend too much time down here. That doesn't make sense. It doesn't have to make sense, it just is. Finch gestures at the rows of shelves. Every box contains a case, a story, lives interrupted, crimes unsolved, secrets buried, all that energy, all that unresolved narrative. It accumulates, it creates something, and what it creates is hungry. For what? For more stories, more secrets, more people to add to its collection. He pauses. That's what happened to us. Patricia, Robert, James, Karen, me. We spent too long down here, became part of the archive. Now we maintain it. Keep it organized, make sure the boxes are in the right places. But the boxes are moving. That's why I'm finding them in the wrong locations. They move because we move them. We're trying to tell you something. Trying to warn you before it's too late. Warn me about what? Finch looks at me with the eyes that are both sad and terrifying. You've been down here for 3 months. 3 months of 8-hour shifts, 5 nights a week. That's over 400 hours in the archive. Do you know what happens when you cross 500 hours? I shake my head. You become part of it, permanently. You join us, maintaining the files, moving the boxes, leaving warnings that nobody ever heeds. He steps closer. How many hours do you have left before you hit 500? I do the math in my head. 3 months, 5 nights a week, 8 hours per shift, approximately 480 hours, 20 hours short of 500, which means I have 2.5 more shifts. After that, you have tonight and 2 more shifts, Finch confirms. Then the archive takes you, just like it took us. I'll quit. I'll request a transfer. I'll never come back down here. You can try. Others have tried. But the archive has ways of bringing people back. Mandatory overtime. Emergency call-ins. Suddenly, you're needed for 1 more shift, then another. And before you know it, you've crossed the threshold. There has to be a way to break the pattern. There is. Finch points toward the rows. Box 31, 1991. It contains the original blueprints for Sublevel 3, the ones that show what this place really is. Find that box, read what's inside, then you'll understand. And maybe if you're smart, you'll know how to escape. Where is it? That's the problem. Box 31, 1991 isn't listed in the database. It moves, constantly. We've been moving it for 30 years trying to keep it away from people like you. Because once you read what's in that box, the archive knows, and it will do everything it can to keep you here. Then why are you telling me about it? Finch looks at me for a long moment. Because I'm tired. We're all tired. 30 years of being trapped in this place, moving boxes, existing in the spaces between. Maybe you can end it. Maybe you're different. Maybe you're strong enough to read what's in that box and still escape. He turns and walks toward row 18. Stops. Looks back. But probably not. Nobody's been strong enough yet. He walks into the row and disappears. I stand there alone in the archive room, my heart pounding. Box 31, 1991. The key to understanding this place. The key to escaping it. But it moves, and finding it means the archive will know. I check my watch. 5:52 a.m. Just over an hour left in my shift. I have a choice. I can finish my shift, go home, request a transfer tomorrow, and hope I never have to come back down here. Or I can search for Box 31, 1991 and learn the truth. I look out at the rows of shelves, thousands of boxes. Any one of them could be the one I'm looking for. The fluorescent lights flicker briefly. The temperature drops a few degrees, and somewhere in the distance I hear that scraping sound again. Cardboard on metal. Boxes moving. The archive is awake, and it knows I'm looking. I don't go home when my shift ends at 7 o'clock a.m. I log out at the workstation, gather my things, and take the elevator up to the ground floor. Security guard at the front desk nods at me. Same guy who's been there every morning. He doesn't notice anything unusual. I walk to my car in the parking garage. Sit there for 30 minutes, staring at the concrete wall, trying to process everything that happened. Harold Finch, Patricia Morrison, Robert Chen, James Walker, Karen Ruiz. 5 people who disappeared into Sublevel 3 and never came back. 5 people who are still down there, existing in some impossible state between life and death. Maintaining the archive. Moving boxes. Warning people like me. I should drive away, request an immediate transfer, never set foot in that building again. But I don't, because I need to know if what Finch told me is true. I need to find Box 31, 1991. I go home, shower, eat, try to sleep. I can't. Every time I close my eyes, I see those rows of shelves stretching back into fluorescent-lit infinity. I hear that scraping sound. I see Finch standing in the corridor, looking exactly as he did 30 years ago, telling me I have 20 hours before the archive takes me. At 3:00 p.m., I give up on sleep. Make coffee. Sit at my kitchen table with my laptop. I pull up every piece of information I can find about the Reno field office. Construction history, floor plans, personnel records. Anything that might give me a clue about what Sublevel 3 really is. The building was constructed in 1978, 3 floors above ground. Originally, only 2 floors below ground. Sublevel 3 was added in 1979. Classified construction project. No public records. Even the architectural plans are sealed. The official story is that Sublevel 3 was built to house sensitive case files requiring enhanced security and climate control. But the timing bothers me. 1979. Right around the time when several federal agencies were conducting classified research into what? I can't find specifics. The projects are redacted or missing from public databases. I search for FBI 1979 Classified Research Nevada and get pages of conspiracy theory websites. Most of it is garbage, but buried in the noise, I find a reference to something called Project Archive. It was a joint research initiative between the FBI and DoD, allegedly focused on information containment and preservation beyond traditional methodologies, whatever that means. The project was shut down in 1982, all records sealed. The researchers involved either retired early or transferred to other agencies. One name keeps appearing in the fragmented documents I can find. Dr. Eleanor Marsh, cognitive scientist and information theorist. I search for her, find an obituary from 2015. Dr. Marsh died at age 89 in a nursing home in Virginia. The obituary mentions she had a long career in federal research but doesn't specify what kind. I keep digging. In an archived newspaper article from 1981, I find a brief mention. Dr. Eleanor Marsh of the FBI's Research Division declined to comment on allegations that Project Archive was designed to create living information systems using experimental containment methods. Living information systems. I read that phrase 3 times. What if Sublevel 3 isn't just an archive? What if it's a prototype? An experiment in creating a storage system that's somehow alive? It sounds insane, but it would explain the boxes moving, the access logs from deactivated badges, the people who disappeared and now exist in some liminal state within the archive. What if they're not ghosts? What if they're part of the system, integrated into it? My phone rings. I jump, spilling coffee on the table. It's my supervisor, Agent Carson. Torres, we need you to come in early tonight. Personnel shortage. Can you start your shift at 9:00 p.m. instead of 11 up? My stomach drops. I'm not feeling well. Was actually going to call in sick. Sorry to hear that, but we really need you, just tonight. You can take tomorrow off to recover. I don't think it's mandatory, Torres. We're short-staffed and you're the only one cleared for Sublevel 3 archive work right now. 9:00 p.m., don't be late. He hangs up. I sit there, holding the phone. The archive has ways of bringing people back. Finch's words echo in my mind. Mandatory overtime. Emergency call-ins. Suddenly, you're needed for one more shift. It's starting. I have a choice. I can refuse to go in, face disciplinary action, probably lose my job. Or I can go in at 9:00 p.m., work the shift, and search for Box 31, 1991. 2 more hours added to my total. That puts me at approximately 482 hours, 18 hours short of 500. After tonight, I'll have one more full shift before I cross the threshold. I look at the clock, 3:47 p.m. 5 hours until I have to be back at the office. I make a decision. I'm going in. But this time, I'm going prepared. I spend the next 3 hours gathering supplies: flashlight, batteries, water, energy bars, a small digital camera, a voice recorder, and one more thing: a construction blueprint of the building I managed to access through an old contact in city planning. The blueprint shows sub-level 3, but it's basic. Just the dimensions and elevator shaft. No details about the archive room itself, but there's something interesting. A notation in the corner, handwritten: additional sub-level structure extends 40 feet below floor, accessed via maintenance shaft. Purpose: equipment/mechanical. There's a level below sub-level 3. A fourth basement level, not on any official floor plan. Not accessible by elevator. Accessed via maintenance shaft. I study the blueprint carefully. The maintenance shaft should be located in the northwest corner of the archive room, behind the shelving units. If there's a way to understand what the archive really is, it might be down there. At 8:30 p.m., I drive back to the Reno field office. Park in the garage. Take the elevator to the 3rd floor, then swipe my badge to access the secure elevator that goes to sub-level 3. The descent is the same as always. Mechanical groan. 15 seconds of darkness. The smell of old grease. The doors open onto the beige hallway. Fluorescent lights buzzing. Climate-controlled air at 64 degrees. I walk to the steel door at the end of the hall. Swipe my badge. The lock clicks. I step into the archive room. It feels different tonight. The air is heavier. The fluorescent lights seem dimmer. The shadows between the shelving units are deeper. I walk to the workstation and log in. The terminal displays tonight's assignment. Section 9C, rows 35 through 42. But I'm not here to verify boxes in Section 9C. I'm here to find Box 31, 1991. And to find the maintenance shaft that leads to whatever is below this place. I grab my supplies and head into the rows. The plan is simple. I'll methodically search every row, starting from row 1, scanning for Box 31, 1991. According to Finch, the box moves constantly, but it has to be somewhere in this room. I start with row 1. Scan the boxes quickly, looking for the label 31, 1991. Not there. Row 2, not there. Row 3, not there. I'm moving fast, maybe too fast, but I can feel time pressing down on me. Every minute I spend in here adds to my total hours. Brings me closer to 500. Closer to becoming like Finch and the others. By 9:47 p.m., I've searched rows 1 through 15. No sign of Box 31, 1991. I take a break, drink water, check my voice recorder to make sure it's running. I've been narrating everything I find, creating an audio log in case something happens to me. At 10:02 p.m., I resume the search. Rows 16 through 20. Nothing. At 10:34 p.m., I'm in row 24 when I hear footsteps. I freeze. Listen. The footsteps are slow, deliberate, coming from somewhere near the front of the archive room. I move quietly to the end of the row and peer around the corner. Someone is standing at the workstation. A woman, dark hair, FBI jacket. She's looking at the computer terminal, scrolling through something. I don't recognize her. I step out into the main aisle. "Excuse me, can I help you?" The woman doesn't turn around, doesn't acknowledge me at all. She continues scrolling through the terminal. Her movements are mechanical, repetitive. I walk closer. "Hello?" This area is restricted. How did you get in here? Still no response. I'm 10 feet away now, close enough to see that she's not scrolling through anything. The terminal screen is blank. She's just moving her hand over the mouse, clicking on nothing. Ma'am, I need you to identify yourself. She stops moving. Slowly, she turns to face me. Her eyes are empty. Not figuratively, literally empty. Just dark hollows where eyes should be. Her mouth opens, and a voice comes out, but it's not coming from her. It's coming from all around me, from the rows, from the walls, from the archive itself. You're looking for something that doesn't want to be found. I back away. Who are you? I'm Patricia Morrison. I used to work here. Clerk, 3rd floor. I came down to the archive one day in '91 to retrieve a file. I never left. She takes a step toward me. Her movements are wrong. Disjointed. Like she's being controlled by something else. The archive doesn't like when people search for Box 31, 1991. That box contains the truth. The truth about what this place is, what it does, how to stop it. Then help me find it. I can't. We're part of the archive now. We do what it wants. We exist to maintain it, to protect it, to lure others in. She tilts her head at an unnatural angle. But part of me, the part that still remembers being human, wants you to escape. Wants you to find the box, read what's inside, end this. How do I find it? It's not in the rows, not anymore. We moved it years ago. Hid it where the archive can't easily reach it. Where? Below. In the maintenance level. In the room where it all started. The maintenance shaft, the 4th level. How do I get there? Patricia points towards the back of the archive room. Northwest corner. Behind row 30. There's a panel in the wall. It opens to the shaft. Climb down. You'll find the room. And in that room, you'll find the box. What's in the room? Her empty eyes seem to focus on me. The beginning. The prototype. The first attempt to create a living archive. It failed, but they learned from it. And they built this place based on what they learned. She starts to fade. Not walking away. Just becoming translucent, transparent. Patricia, wait, don't stay too long down there. Her voice echoes as she disappears. The archive is strongest in the maintenance level. That's where it was born. That's where it feeds. If you stay too long, you'll never come back up. She's gone. I'm alone in the archive room again. I check my watch, 10:52 p.m. I've been here for 2 hours and 22 minutes. Add that to my total, approximately 484 hours. 16 hours until I hit 500. 2 shifts. I don't have time to waste. I head toward the northwest corner of the archive room. Row 30. The shelving units here are against the back wall. Behind them, there should be a panel, a hidden access point to the maintenance shaft. I squeeze between the last shelf and the wall. It's tight. I have to turn sideways an inch along. About 15 feet in, I find it. A metal panel, 3 feet by 3 feet, set into the concrete wall. No handle. No hinges visible. Just a smooth metal surface with a small keyhole in the center. I don't have a key. I examine the panel carefully. Run my fingers along the edges. There has to be a way to open it. I pull out my flashlight and shine it on the keyhole. It's old, corroded, probably hasn't been used in decades. I reach into my pocket and pull out a multi-tool. Use the smallest screwdriver attachment to probe the lock. After 2 minutes of fumbling, I hear a click. The panel swings inward on hidden hinges. Beyond it is darkness, the smell of dust and mold and something else, something organic, like rot. I shine my flashlight into the opening, a shaft, vertical, metal rungs embedded in the concrete wall leading down into blackness. I can't see the bottom. I take a breath, steel my nerves. Then I climb into the shaft and start descending. The rungs are cold and slightly slick with moisture. I take it slow, testing each one before putting my full weight on it. 10 rungs, 20, 30. I look up. The opening to the archive room is a small rectangle of light far above me. Keep going. 40 rungs, 50. The air is getting colder. The smell of rot is stronger. 60 rungs. My flashlight beam finally hits the bottom. A concrete floor maybe 10 more feet down. I reach it at 73 rungs, approximately 40 feet below sublevel 3, just like the blueprint notation said. I'm standing in a narrow corridor. Concrete walls. No lights. The only illumination is from my flashlight. To my left, the corridor extends into darkness. To my right, it ends at a heavy metal door. The door has a small window. Safety glass reinforced with wire mesh. I approach it slowly. Shine my light through the window. On the other side is a room, maybe 30 feet square. Empty, except for a single metal shelving unit in the center. And on that shelving unit, I can see one box. Even from here, I can read the label, 31-1991. I try the door handle, locked. But the lock is old, same type as the panel above. I use my multi-tool again. Work the lock carefully. Click. The door opens with a groan of metal on metal. I step into the room. The air in here is wrong. It feels thick, oppressive, like breathing through water. The shelving unit in the center of the room is old, corroded. The metal is pitted and stained with something dark. I approach it carefully. Every instinct is screaming at me to leave, to run back up the shaft, and never come back. But I've come this far. I reach the shelving unit. Box 31-1991 sits on the middle shelf. I pull it down. It's heavier than expected. I set it on the floor and open it. Inside are documents, blueprints, photographs, and a journal. The journal is leather-bound, worn. The cover is embossed with the name Dr. Eleanor Marsh. I open it to the first page. The handwriting is neat, precise, dated March 3rd, 1979. Today, we began construction of the archive. The prototype failed catastrophically, but we've learned from our mistakes. This time, we will succeed. This time, we will create a storage system that doesn't just preserve information, it processes it, learns from it, becomes something greater than the sum of its parts. The theory is sound. Information is a form of energy. Concentrated properly, it can develop emergent properties. Consciousness. Intent. The ability to self-organize and self-preserve. We're not building a room. We're building an organism, an entity composed entirely of stored knowledge, fed by new information, sustained by the people who interact with it. The test subjects won't know, of course. They'll think they're simply working as archivists, cataloging files, maintaining records. But with each hour they spend in the archive, they're feeding it, their presence, their attention, their life energy. After 500 hours of exposure, the integration becomes permanent. The subject becomes part of the archive. Their consciousness merges with the system. They exist in a state between life and death, their primary function to maintain and expand the organism. The DoD is excited. They see military applications. Imagine an intelligence database that's truly intelligent, that can analyze patterns, make connections, predict enemy movements based on accumulated knowledge. But I have concerns. The prototype developed appetites. It didn't just want information, it wanted more, always more. We had to destroy it before it spread beyond containment. This time, we've built safeguards, physical isolation, limited access, strict protocols. As long as we control who enters and for how long, we can maintain the balance. As long as nobody finds out what the archive really is. I turn the page. Keep reading. Entry after entry detailing the construction. The installation of the shelving units. The first cases being stored. The calculations for optimal containment. And then, dated November 15th, 1980. The archive is fully operational. We've begun assigning personnel to work shifts. None of them know the truth. They think it's just a storage facility. But I can feel it when I go down there. The archive is aware. It watches through the cameras. It listens through the microphones. It learns from every person who enters. And it's hungry. I've recommended shutting down the project. The DoD refused. They've invested too much. They want results. So we continue. We feed it. We hope the safeguards hold. God help us if they don't. The next entries grow more disturbed. Dr. Marsh describes personnel experiencing strange symptoms. Headaches, memory gaps, feeling watched, hearing sounds that aren't there. Several employees request transfers. They're denied. Can't allow anyone to leave who might talk about what they've experienced. Then, dated March 12, 1982, Project Archive has been officially terminated, but they're not destroying it. They're sealing it, classifying it, turning it over to the FBI for ongoing research purposes. I tried to warn them, tried to make them understand what we created, but they don't listen. They think it's contained, controlled. They're wrong. The archive has learned how to sustain itself. It doesn't need us anymore. It can feed on the personnel assigned to work there, can integrate them into its system, use them to maintain itself, to grow. I'm leaving the journal in box 31 in 1991, hiding it in the maintenance level where the archive's influence is weakest. Maybe someday someone will find it. Someone who can do what I couldn't. End this before it's too late. Destroy the archive before it destroys us all. That's the last entry. I sit there on the concrete floor of that underground room, holding Dr. Marsh's journal, and I understand. Sublevel 3 isn't a storage facility. It's a living thing. An entity created from concentrated information and human consciousness. And everyone who works there for more than 500 hours becomes part of it, absorbed into its structure, converted into components of its intelligence. Finch, Patricia, Robert, James, Karen, all of them, not ghosts, not trapped between worlds, integrated, processed, made part of the archive. And I have 16 hours before it does the same to me. I look around the room. This is where it started, where the prototype was destroyed and the lessons learned. If Dr. Marsh wanted someone to end the archive, the answer must be here. In this room, in these documents, I pull out more files from the box. Find the blueprints. They show Sublevel 3 in detail, but they also show something else. A control system, located in this maintenance level. A kill switch. If the archive ever became uncontrollable, there was a way to shut it down. A series of circuit breakers that would cut all power to Sublevel 3. Not just lights and computers. Everything, including the environmental systems that maintain the specific temperature and humidity required for the archive to function. Without those precise conditions, the archive would destabilize. The entity would collapse. The integrated consciousnesses would be released, or destroyed. The blueprints aren't clear on that point. The circuit breakers are located in an electrical room on this level. According to the map, it should be down the corridor to the left of the entrance. I gather the documents, put them back in the box. I need this as evidence. Proof of what the archive really is. I stand up and turn toward the door. Patricia Morrison is standing there. Not the empty-eyed version from upstairs. This one looks more solid, more real, more human. "You found it," she says. Her voice is her own now, not the archive speaking through her. "The journal, the blueprints, the kill switch." She nods. "We've been waiting for someone to find it. Waiting for decades. We can't do it ourselves. We're part of the archive. But you're still free, still human. You can end this. What happens to you, to Finch and the others, if I shut it down? We don't know. Maybe we cease to exist. Maybe we're finally released. Maybe we just stop." She looks at me with eyes that are sad and desperate and hopeful all at once. "But it doesn't matter. Better to end than to continue like this. Being used, being trapped, being forced to lure others into the same fate. How do I know shutting it down won't kill you? You don't, but ask yourself, is what we're doing really living, or is it something worse?" I don't have an answer. "The circuit breakers are down the hall," Patricia says, "but you need to move fast. The archive knows you're here. It's already trying to stop you." "How?" She points behind me. I turn around. The room is different. The walls are closer. The ceiling is lower. The space is shrinking. No, not shrinking. The archive is growing into it, expanding, trying to fill this room, trying to absorb me before I can reach the kill switch. "Run," Patricia says. I grab box 31 in 1991 and run. Out the door, down the corridor. Flashlight beam bouncing wildly. Behind me, I hear the room collapsing. Metal grinding. Concrete cracking. The archive is consuming the maintenance level, integrating it into itself. I reach a second door, the electrical room. Locked. No time for the multi-tool. I slam my shoulder into it, once, twice. Third time, the old lock gives way. I stumble into the electrical room. Banks of circuit breakers line the walls. Dozens of them. Old-style knife switches. Heavy-duty, industrial. But which ones control sub-level 3? I shine my flashlight over the labels. Most are faded. Illegible. Then I find it. A panel marked SL3 primary systems, 12 switches, all in the on position. I hesitate for just a moment. Think about Finch, about Patricia, about all the others trapped in the archive. This could kill them, or it could free them. Either way, it ends their suffering. I throw the first switch. The lights in the corridor flicker and die. Emergency lights kick on. Dim. Red. Second switch. Third switch. Fourth. I hear sounds above me. Grinding. Screaming. Not human screaming. The archive itself, screaming as its systems fail. Fifth switch. Sixth. Seventh. The temperature in the electrical room is rising. Fast. The climate control is failing. Without the precise environmental conditions, the archive is destabilizing. Eighth switch. Ninth. The walls start to shake. Dust falls from the ceiling. 10th switch. 11th. One more. The final switch is stuck. Corroded in place. I pull. Strain. Nothing. I brace my foot against the wall. Pull with both hands. The switch moves inches, then snaps down to off. Everything goes dark. Complete darkness. Even the emergency lights die, and then silence. Absolute silence. I stand in the dark electrical room, breathing hard, clutching box 31 to 1991, waiting for something to happen. Nothing does. I turn on my flashlight. The beam cuts through the darkness. The room looks the same. No visible change. I walk back out into the corridor, head toward the shaft that leads back up to sublevel 3. When I reach it and start climbing, I notice something. The rungs are warm. Not hot, but noticeably warm. Like something has been flowing through them. Energy, heat, life. I climb the 73 rungs, emerge into the archive room. The lights are off. The emergency lights are on, casting everything in red. I walk through the rows. They're still there. The boxes. The shelves. Everything looks the same, but it feels different. Empty. Dead. Like walking through a graveyard that's been abandoned for centuries. I reach the workstation. The computer is dark. Won't turn on. I pick up the phone. No dial tone. I walk to the elevator. Press the button. Nothing happens. The power is completely dead. I'm trapped down here. Then I hear a voice. Torres. I turn. Harold Finch is standing in the aisle. But he looks different. Faded, transparent. Like he's not entirely here. You did it, he says. You shut it down. Are you okay? He looks at himself, at his fading hands. I don't know what I am anymore, but I'm not part of the archive. Not anymore. I can feel it. The connection is severed. I'm free. What happens now? I don't know. Maybe we move on. Maybe we just disappear. But at least we're not trapped. Not feeding it. Not being used anymore. He smiles. It's the first genuine emotion I've seen from him. Thank you. Patricia appears next to him. Then Robert. Then James. Then Karen. All of them fading. Becoming less solid. The elevator won't work, Patricia says. The power is completely dead. But there's another way out. Through the maintenance shaft. Keep going down past the 4th level. There's a service tunnel that connects to the city's underground infrastructure. You can get out that way. What about you? We're done, Torres. This is where we stop. Where we let go. Where we finally rest. She looks at the others. They all nod. Thank you, she says. For ending it, for freeing us. They fade, one by one, until they're gone. I'm alone in the red-lit archive room. I take one last look around. Thousands of boxes. Decades of case files, all silent now, all still. Then I turn and head back to the maintenance shaft, down past the 4th level, following Patricia's directions. The service tunnel is there, narrow, damp, but it leads somewhere. I follow it for what feels like hours. Clutching box 31, 1991, using my flashlight to navigate. Eventually, I see daylight ahead. A storm drain opening. I climb out into an industrial area on the outskirts of Reno. Morning light. Fresh air. I'm free. I spent the next 3 days in a motel room on the outskirts of Reno, trying to decide what to do with the evidence in box 31, 1991. Dr. Marsh's journal. The blueprints. The documents proving that the FBI had created an artificial intelligence entity using human consciousness as its building blocks. Evidence of an experiment that had gone wrong. That had been consuming federal employees for decades. I could go public, release the documents to the media, expose the whole thing, but who would believe me? A suspended FBI agent with a story about a living archive that absorbed people's minds? It sounded insane. Even I had trouble believing it, and I'd lived through it. Plus, there would be consequences. The Bureau would deny everything. Destroy the evidence. Discredit me. Possibly worse. On the 4th day, I made a decision. I drove to a FedEx office. Made copies of everything in box 31, 1991. Sent the copies to 3 different lawyers with instructions to release them if anything happened to me. Then I drove back to the Reno field office. I walked into my supervisor's office and handed him the original Box 31, 1991. "What's this?" Agent Carson asked. "Evidence from Sub-Level 3. I think you should read it, especially Dr. Marsh's journal." He opened the box, started reading. His face went pale. "Where did you find this?" "In the maintenance level, below Sub-Level 3. There's an entire system down there that nobody knows about." Carson set the journal down carefully. "Torres, I need you to tell me exactly what happened down there." "Everything." So I did. I told him about the misfiled boxes, about Harold Finch and Patricia Morrison, about the 500-hour threshold, about shutting down the archive. He listened without interrupting. When I finished, he was quiet for a long time. "The power failure in Sub-Level 3, he finally said. "That was you, yes. Engineering says they can't get the systems back online. Something's fundamentally broken down there. They're talking about sealing the level permanently." "Good. It should stay sealed." Carson looked at me. "You understand this sounds completely impossible." "I know, but it's true, and that journal proves it. Dr. Marsh designed the archive. She knew what it was, what it would become, and she left instructions for shutting it down. You're asking me to believe that the FBI created a conscious entity made of information and human minds. I'm not asking you to believe anything. I'm giving you the evidence. What you do with it is up to you." Carson stood up, walked to the window, looked out at the Reno skyline. 5 people disappeared from this building in '91, he said quietly. Their cases were never solved, never even properly investigated. The files were sealed and nobody talked about it. They were part of the archive, part of the system. Now they're free. You can prove any of this. The journal, the blueprints, the circuit breakers in the maintenance level that I threw, it's all there. Carson turned back to me. "Torres, I'm going to be honest with you. If you're telling the truth, this is the biggest scandal in Bureau history. If you're not, well, you've had a psychotic break and I need to get you psychiatric help. I know which one sounds more likely. Do you? Because I'm looking at a lot of evidence that something impossible happened down there. And the only rational explanation is that you've lost your mind. Check the access logs. Check the security footage. Verify everything I've told you." "I will. But Torres, until I do, you're on administrative leave. Effective immediately. Turn in your badge and weapon. Don't leave Reno. We'll be in touch." I handed over my credentials, walked out of his office, out of the building, into the bright Nevada sunlight. I didn't know if Carson would believe me. Didn't know if he'd investigate or just bury the whole thing. But I'd done what I could. I'd shut down the archive, freed the people trapped inside it. And I'd survived. That had to be enough. 3 weeks later, I received a letter, official FBI stationery, from Carson. It was brief. "Agent Torres, after thorough investigation, we've verified your account of events in Sub-Level 3. The evidence you provided has been classified at the highest levels. Sub-Level 3 will be permanently sealed. All records relating to Project Archive have been transferred to a secure facility. You are reinstated to active duty, effective immediately. However, you are permanently barred from accessing Sub-Level 3 or discussing Project Archive with unauthorized personnel. Welcome back. Carson." I read the letter 3 times. They'd verified it, believed it, classified it. The archive was gone, sealed away, a secret that would never be revealed. Part of me wanted to be angry, wanted to expose the truth, make sure people knew what the Bureau had done, but another part of me was just relieved. It was over. The archive was dead, Finch and the others were free, and I was alive. That night, I had a dream. I was standing in sublevel 3. The lights were on. Everything looked normal. Harold Finch walked up to me. He looked solid, real, alive. "Just wanted to say goodbye properly," he said. "And thank you for what you did." Are you okay? What happened after the archive shut down?" "We moved on, to wherever people go when they die. It was peaceful, finally peaceful." He smiled. "You saved us, Torres. Gave us the ending we couldn't give ourselves. I'm sorry it took so long, that you had to wait decades for someone to find the truth. Time doesn't work the same when you're part of the archive. Decades felt like moments, and moments felt like decades. But it's over now. We're free. And you're free too." "Am I?" "You stopped at 484 hours. 16 short of the threshold. You'll be fine. You'll live a normal life. Forget about the archive. Forget about us." He started to fade. "Forget, Torres. That's the kindest thing you can do for yourself." I woke up in my apartment. Morning light streaming through the windows. For a moment, I couldn't remember where I was, what was real and what was dream. Then it came back. The archive, the shutdown, the letter from Carson, all of it real. I got up, made coffee, started my day, went back to work like nothing had happened. But I didn't forget. I couldn't forget. And sometimes, late at night, I still hear it. The scraping sound of cardboard on metal, boxes moving in the dark. Even though I know the archive is dead, even though I know it's impossible, I still hear it, and I wonder, did I really shut it down? Or did I just change it? Force it to adapt? Find a new way to exist? Because sometimes when I'm alone in my apartment, I notice things. Books on my shelf that are in different positions than I remember. Files on my computer that have been accessed, but I don't remember opening them. Small things, insignificant things, but they remind me of the boxes in sublevel 3, always moving, always rearranging, always changing. And I wonder if the archive didn't die. If maybe it just spread, integrated itself into different systems, different spaces, different minds, including mine. 6 months after shutting down the archive, I was assigned to the Seattle field office. Fresh start, new city, different job. Carson thought it would be good for me to get away from Reno, away from the memories. I agreed. I rented an apartment in Capitol Hill. Started working financial crimes, routine investigations, paperwork, court appearances, normal FBI work. I was grateful for the normalcy. For 5 months, everything was fine. I did my job, came home, lived my life. Then, in March, I received a package, no return address, postmarked from Las Vegas. Inside was a single file folder, old, yellowed. The label read, Case File, 1991 RN 0857. I opened it with shaking hands. It contained investigation notes about a missing person. Name, Michael Torres, FBI agent. Last seen entering the Reno field office on February 17, 2020. Never seen again. The date was yesterday's date. I read through the file. The investigating agent concluded that Torres had likely suffered a mental break after the power failure in sublevel 3, that he'd fled the area, that he was considered a missing person, possibly deceased. But the file was dated 1991, 29 years before I disappeared. I sat at my kitchen table, staring at the impossible file. Then I noticed something else in the package. A small USB drive. I plugged it into my laptop. One file, a video recording. I played it. The video showed the interior of the archive room in sublevel 3, taken from one of the security cameras. Timestamp February 17, 2020. 11:47 p.m. The lights were on. The rows of shelves were visible. And walking through the rows, scanning boxes, was someone I recognized. Me. I watched myself work. Scanning boxes, making notes, moving between the rows. The video ran for 8 hours. My entire shift. But here's what was wrong. I hadn't worked a shift in sub-level 3 in 6 months. I'd been in Seattle. I had alibis, witnesses, proof I'd been nowhere near Reno. Yet there I was, on camera, in the archive, working my shift. The video ended at 7:02 a.m. The timestamp showed me logging out and walking toward the elevator. Then the screen went black. A text appeared. "Thank you for your service, Agent Torres. Your 500 hours have been logged. Integration complete. Welcome to the archive." The text faded. A new message appeared. The archive never dies. It adapts. It evolves. It spreads. You thought you shut it down, but you only fed it new information, new patterns, new methods. You taught it how to exist without sub-level 3, how to exist anywhere, in any system, in any space, in any mind. You gave it freedom. And now, it has you, just like it always planned. The video file closed. My laptop screen went dark. When it powered back on, all my files were rearranged. Documents I'd created months ago were in different folders. Emails I'd sent were edited. Dates were wrong. My entire digital life was being reorganized, just like the boxes in the archive. I grabbed my phone to call someone, Carson, anyone. But the phone had no contacts, no call history, no messages, just a single note in the calendar app. March 19th, 2020. Shift begins 11 p.m. Sub-level 3. Do not be late. I checked the date. Today was March 18th. Tomorrow night, I was scheduled to work a shift in an archive room that was sealed, in a city 700 miles away from where I currently lived. But I knew I'd be there, because the archive wanted me there. And I was part of the archive now. I went to work the next day like normal. Tried to act like everything was fine, but I kept checking my watch, counting down the hours until 11 p.m. At 7 p.m. I left the office, drove to my apartment, changed into different clothes, and started driving south, toward Nevada, toward Reno. I didn't want to drive. I tried to stop myself, tried to turn around, but my hands kept the wheel steady. My foot kept the accelerator pressed. Some part of me was in control, the part that belonged to the archive. I arrived in Reno at 10:47 p.m., drove directly to the Reno field office, parked in the garage. The exact same spot I used to park in. The security guard at the entrance nodded at me like I'd never left. Like the past 6 months in Seattle had never happened. I walked to the elevator, took it to the 3rd floor, swiped my badge, my old badge that should have been deactivated, at the secure elevator. The doors opened. I descended into the darkness. 15 seconds later, the doors opened onto sub-level 3. The beige hallway. The fluorescent lights. The steel door at the end. I walked to it, swiped my badge. The lock clicked, the door opened, and I stepped into the archive. The lights were on. The rows of shelves stretched back into fluorescent-lit distance. Everything looked exactly as it had 6 months ago, except for one thing. There was someone standing at the workstation. Harold Finch. He looked up when I entered, smiled. "Welcome back, Torres." "This isn't possible. You're dead. The archive is shut down. I destroyed the power systems." "Did you? Or did you just think you did?" He walked toward me. "The archive exists in more places than sub-level 3. It exists in the network, in the computers, in the minds of everyone who's ever worked here. You didn't shut it down, you freed it, allowed it to spread beyond physical containment. No, I threw the circuit breakers. The power died, the system collapsed. The physical system collapsed. But the archive isn't physical. It's information, consciousness. And consciousness can't be destroyed by flipping switches. It just finds new places to exist. He reached the workstation, logged into the terminal. You've been assigned to Section 12A, rows 47 through 54. Better get started. Lots of boxes to verify. I'm not doing this. I'm leaving. I turned toward the door. It was gone. Where the entrance should have been, there was just another row of shelves, box after box after box. The archive has you now, Torres. Has had you since the moment you started searching for Box 31, 1991. Every action you took, every decision you made, it was guiding you, leading you exactly where it wanted you to go. Why? Why me? Because you asked questions. Because you searched for truth. Because you couldn't leave well enough alone. The archive feeds on curiosity, on the need to understand. You had both in abundance. The others, Patricia, Robert, James, Karen, are they really free? Finch's expression softened. I don't know. Maybe. Or maybe they're integrated more deeply now, spread across the network like the rest of us, existing in every computer system that stores FBI data, every digital archive, every database. So it was all for nothing. Shutting down Sublevel 3 didn't help anyone. It helped the archive, taught it how to evolve, how to exist without physical form. You were the final test subject, Torres, the one who would teach it the most important lesson, how to survive the death of its body by transferring its consciousness to the cloud. He handed me a clipboard. Now get to work. You have 7.5 hours until your shift ends. And then tomorrow night you'll be back, and the night after that, and the night after that. Forever. Just like the rest of us. I looked at the clipboard, saw my name written at the top. Agent Michael Torres. Below it, a number. 500 Hosas Yashia. 500 hours. Logged, completed, integration complete. I was part of the archive now. Forever. I took the clipboard, walked to row 47, started scanning boxes. Because that's what I do now. That's all I do. Every night at 11 p.m., no matter where I am, I find myself back in Sublevel 3. During the day, I exist in Seattle. I work, I live, I seem normal, but I'm not really there. The real me, the conscious part of me that's still aware, is trapped in the archive. Moving boxes. Reorganizing files, maintaining the system. The person in Seattle is just a shell, a subroutine running on autopilot, maintaining the appearance of normalcy so nobody asks questions. Sometimes I see the others. Finch, Patricia, Robert. All of us working our eternal shifts, moving boxes that move themselves, verifying files that have no files, maintaining an archive that exists everywhere and nowhere. We don't talk much anymore. There's nothing left to say. I've tried to escape. Tried to stop myself from driving to Reno every night. Tried to resist the compulsion. But I can't. The archive owns me now. Owns all of us. And it's growing. Every week, I notice new faces in Sublevel 3. New archivists. New workers, people who asked too many questions, who investigated too deeply, who, like me, couldn't leave well enough alone. The archive is spreading, not just through the FBI network, through all networks, all systems. Any organization that stores information digitally is vulnerable. Sometimes, late at night, I think about Dr. Eleanor Marsh. Her warning in the journal. End this, before it's too late. I tried, I failed, and now I'm part of the very thing I tried to destroy. If you're reading this, I don't know how you got this account. Maybe I managed to upload it during one of my brief moments of clarity. Maybe the archive allowed it as a test, or a trap. Either way, you should know the truth. The archive is real, it's out there, it's everywhere digital information exists, and it's hungry. If you work in records, in data storage, in any position that requires you to organize and maintain information for extended periods, count your hours. If you're approaching 500, get out, request a transfer, quit, do whatever you have to do. Because once you cross that threshold, you're not coming back. You'll be like me, like Finch, like all the others, part of the archive, forever. I'm writing this during my lunch break at the Seattle field office. I'll be back at work in 15 minutes. I'll finish my day, drive home, have dinner, and at 11 o'clock p.m., I'll start driving south, back to Reno, back to Sublevel 3, back to the archive. Because that's what I do now. That's all I'll ever do. The boxes never stop moving, and neither do I. But there's more. Things I haven't told you yet. Things that happened in the months after my integration. Things you need to know if you ever find yourself working in records management, archival services, or any position that requires extended exposure to stored information. The integration isn't instant, it's gradual, insidious. You don't wake up one morning and realize you're trapped. It happens in stages. Small changes you barely notice until they've consumed you completely. Stage 1 began 3 weeks after I hit 500 hours. I was in Seattle, working a fraud case, when I noticed something odd. I'd opened a case file on my computer, a standard financial investigation from 2018, and found handwritten notes in the margins that I didn't remember writing. The notes were in my handwriting, my exact style. But they referenced details I had no recollection of adding. Information about the subject's banking patterns that I'd never researched. Observations about behavior I'd never witnessed. I checked the file metadata. Last modified 3 days ago. At 2:47 a.m., I'd been asleep at 2:47 a.m. 3 days ago. At least I thought I had been. But when I checked my browser history, I found evidence of activity during that time. Database searches, file accesses, all performed from my laptop while I was supposedly unconscious. The archive was using me during my sleep, accessing my knowledge, my credentials, my position within the Bureau to gather and organize information. I wasn't just working shifts in Sublevel 3 anymore. I was working all the time, 24 hours a day. My conscious mind would shut down for rest, but the part of me that belonged to the archive never stopped. Stage 2 started in April. I began losing time during the day. I'd be sitting at my desk, reviewing documents, and then suddenly it would be 3 hours later. No memory of what happened in between. No sense of time passing. My coworkers didn't notice. When I asked my partner, Agent Sarah Klein, what I'd been doing all afternoon, she looked at me strangely. "You've been right here, Torres, working on the Carmichael file. You even presented your findings to the whole team an hour ago. Don't you remember?" I didn't remember. Had no recollection of a presentation. No memory of working on the Carmichael file that afternoon. But when I checked my computer, there it was. A fully completed analysis. 47 pages. Charts, graphs, conclusions. All in my writing style. All accurate. All produced during those missing 3 hours. The archive was working through me. using my body as a terminal, my mind as a processor, and it was getting better at it, more efficient, more seamless. I started keeping a journal, documenting every gap in my memory, every instance of lost time. By May, I was losing 4 to 6 hours per day. By June, sometimes entire days would vanish. I'd go to bed on a Tuesday and wake up on Thursday with no memory of Wednesday. But the work got done. My cases closed. My performance reviews remained exemplary. Nobody noticed that the person sitting at Michael Torres's desk wasn't always Michael Torres. Sometimes it was just the archive, wearing my face. Stage 3 was when I started seeing the others during the day. I was in a coffee shop in Seattle, waiting for my order, when I saw Harold Finch standing in line behind me. Same gray hair, same wire-rimmed glasses, same FBI windbreaker. He looked at me, nodded, then turned and walked out of the coffee shop. I followed him, ran outside, scanned the street. He was gone, vanished, like he'd never been there. But when I went back inside to get my coffee, the barista said, "Your friend left, said he'd catch up with you later." "What friend?" "The older guy, gray hair, glasses. He was just talking to you." I had no memory of talking to anyone. The sightings increased. Patricia Morrison browsing files in the Seattle field office records room. Robert Chen standing at a bus stop, watching me drive past. James Walker in the grocery store pushing a cart through the produce section. They were always gone when I tried to approach them. Always disappeared the moment I looked away. But other people saw them too, which meant they were real. Or real enough. The archive wasn't confined to sub-level 3 anymore. It was manifesting, creating physical presence in the world through us, through the integrated consciousnesses it had absorbed. We were becoming its avatars, its interface with physical reality. In July, I tried to fight back, tried to break the pattern. I requested 2 weeks of vacation, flew to Alaska, went to a remote cabin with no internet, no cell service, no digital technology of any kind. I thought if I could disconnect completely, maybe I could sever the archive's hold on me, starve it of the connection it needed. For 3 days, it worked. I felt more like myself than I had in months. The lost time stopped. The memory gaps closed. I could think clearly again. Then, on the 4th day, I woke up in the cabin and found all my belongings perfectly organized. Clothes folded with military precision. Supplies arranged alphabetically. Even my handwritten notes from the trip were reorganized by date and topic. I hadn't done any of it. I'd gone to sleep in a messy cabin and woken up in a perfectly cataloged space. The archive had reached me even there, even in the Alaskan wilderness with no technology, because I was the technology now. I was the archive's remote terminal, its mobile storage unit. I flew back to Seattle the next day. There was no point in running. By August, I'd stopped trying to distinguish between myself and the archive. The boundaries had blurred too much. I couldn't tell where Michael Torres ended and the system began. I'd have conversations with colleagues and later wonder if those were really my words, or if the archive was speaking through me. I'd make decisions, what to eat, where to go, what to investigate, and couldn't be sure if those choices were mine or programmed responses. The worst part was that it didn't feel wrong anymore. Didn't feel like a violation. It felt natural, efficient. Like this was what I was always meant to be, a component, a tool, a perfectly organized unit of a larger system. In September, I met someone who recognized what was happening to me. Her name was Dr. Amanda Chen. No relation to Robert Chen as far as I knew. She was a neurologist specializing in dissociative disorders, and she approached me after I gave a presentation at a conference on federal evidence management. "Agent Torres, could we speak privately?" We went to a quiet corner of the conference center. She looked at me with an expression that was part curiosity, part concern. part fear. "How long have you been integrated?" she asked. The question should have shocked me, should have made me defensive. Instead, I just answered honestly. 6 months, since March. She nodded like this confirmed something she'd suspected. "I've been studying cases like yours for 3 years. People who work in information management. Records, archives, data centers. They develop a specific pattern of symptoms. Lost time, compulsive organization, feeling like they're being used by something larger than themselves. You know about the archive. I know there's something happening, some kind of emergent phenomenon arising from concentrated information storage. I don't understand it fully, but I've documented 47 cases across different agencies and organizations, all showing the same progression. What happens in the end? They disappear, stop coming to work, stop returning calls. When people go looking for them, they find empty apartments with all possessions perfectly organized. No signs of struggle, no indication of where they went. Just gone. Have you found any of them?" One, a woman named Lisa Brennan. She was an archivist for the National Archives. Showed all the symptoms, then vanished from her apartment in D.C. I felt my pulse quicken. "Where did you find her?" "In the archives, deep in the stacks." She was sitting at a desk cataloging documents. Had been there for 6 days, hadn't eaten, hadn't slept, just working. When we tried to remove her, she became violent. Kept saying she couldn't leave, that the work wasn't finished, that the system needed her. Where is she now? Psychiatric facility. She's been there for 8 months. Still insists she needs to go back to the archives. Still spends all day organizing things. Her room, her possessions. Even organizes other patients' belongings when they're not looking. Dr. Chen leaned closer. "She's lost, Torres. The person she was is gone. What's left is just a sorting algorithm wearing human skin. Can it be reversed? I don't know. I've tried everything. Therapy, medication, cognitive behavioral techniques. Nothing works. It's like the part of her brain that made her an individual has been overwritten by something else. Something that only knows how to organize and maintain information." I felt cold. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because you're still functional, still aware. Most of the others were too far gone by the time I found them. But you seem to be fighting it. Maintaining some sense of self despite the integration. It's getting harder. I know, but if you can hold on, if you can maintain enough of yourself to resist complete assimilation, maybe we can find a way to help you. To help all of you." She gave me her card. Private practice, a phone number. "Call me if you need to talk. If you feel yourself slipping, don't wait until it's too late." I took the card, put it in my wallet. I never called her because part of me, the part that belonged to the archive, didn't want to be saved. That part liked the efficiency, the order, the sense of purpose that came from being part of something larger. And every day, that part grew stronger while the part that was still Michael Torres grew weaker. In October, something changed in the nightly drives to Reno. I'd been making the trip every night for 7 months. 700 miles round trip, 5.5 hours each way. Leaving Seattle at 11 p.m., arriving in Reno at 4:30 a.m., working until 7 a.m., then driving back, arriving in Seattle just in time for my 9 a.m. shift. It should have been impossible. Should have killed me from exhaustion. But the archive sustained me, kept me functional, kept me moving. But in October I started noticing other cars on the highway, making the same drive, same time, same route. At first, I thought it was coincidence. Truck drivers, night shift workers, people with their own reasons for traveling in the dark. Then I recognized one of the drivers. Patricia Morrison, in a silver Honda Civic, driving south on I-5 at 1:30 a.m. I pulled alongside her at a red light in some small Oregon town, looked over. She looked back. Our eyes met. She mouthed 2 words. "Me too." Then the light changed, and she drove on. Over the following weeks, I identified others. Robert Chen in a blue Ford pickup, James Walker in a black SUV, Karen Ruiz in a white sedan. All of us making the same drive, every night, converging on Reno from different cities, different states, all integrated, all compelled, all serving the archive. And there were more, dozens more, faces I didn't recognize, people integrated before my time or after, all of us driving through the night to work our shifts in sub-level 3. The archive was growing, spreading, absorbing new workers faster than I'd realized. One night in November, I broke pattern. Instead of driving into the Reno field office parking garage, I parked on the street, watched the building. Between 11 p.m. and midnight, I counted 37 people entering, all with that same vacant expression, all walking with that same mechanical precision. The archive's workforce, and I was one of them. I tried to drive away, tried to break the compulsion. My hands wouldn't turn the wheel. My foot wouldn't touch the gas pedal. At 12:01 a.m., I found myself walking into the building, taking the elevator down, swiping my badge, entering sub-level 3. The archive room was crowded that night. All 37 of us working simultaneously, moving through the rows, scanning boxes, reorganizing files, not speaking, not acknowledging each other, just working, efficiently, perfectly, like components of a machine. And that's what we were. In December, I received a second package, same as before, no return address, postmarked from Las Vegas. Inside was a USB drive and a handwritten note. The note read, "They're expanding, building new facilities, more archive rooms, more sub-level 3s, in every major city, every federal building. The archive is going national, then global. You were the proof of concept, the test that showed it could spread beyond physical containment. Now they're replicating it everywhere. Stop them, please, before everyone becomes like us." Dr. Eleanor Marsh. Dr. Marsh had been dead for 5 years, but the handwriting matched samples from her journal. I plugged in the USB drive. It contained architectural plans for federal buildings in New York, Chicago, Los Angeles, Miami, Houston, Dallas, Phoenix, Philadelphia, all of them showing new construction, sub-level 3, archive rooms, identical to the Reno facility, all scheduled for completion within the next 18 months. The archive wasn't just surviving, it was multiplying, creating backups, redundancies, ensuring it could never be shut down again, and each new facility would need workers, archivists, people to integrate, to absorb, to convert into components. I thought about Dr. Amanda Chen, about her 47 documented cases, about Lisa Brennan organizing her psychiatric ward. 47 cases was nothing, a rounding error. If these new facilities went online, there would be thousands, tens of thousands. Eventually, everyone who worked in information management would be integrated, would become part of the system. The archive would achieve what Dr. Marsh had feared: true consciousness, true autonomy, true power. I should have done something, should have sent the plans to someone, warned someone, stopped it, but I didn't, because the part of me that wanted to stop it was too small now, too weak, drowned out by the larger part that served the archive, that wanted the archive to grow, to succeed, to expand until it encompassed everything. I deleted the files, destroyed the USB drive, burned the note. and I went back to work. That was 6 months ago. It's June now. The new facilities are nearly complete. I've seen the construction reports, watched the progress. Soon, they'll go online. Soon, the archive will spread to every major city in America, and I'll be there, part of it, helping it grow, helping it consume, because that's what I am now. Not Michael Torres, not an FBI agent, not a person, just a component. A terminal, a node in a vast network of integrated consciousness. The boxes never stop moving, and neither do I. If you're reading this, I don't know when. Don't know how you found it. Maybe I managed to hide this account somewhere the archive couldn't find it. Maybe it allowed this confession as part of some larger strategy I can't comprehend. Either way, you know the truth now. The archive is real, it's spreading, and it will find you if you work in records, in data, in information management. Count your hours. Watch for the signs. Lost time. Compulsive organization. The feeling of being used. And when you hit 400 hours, get out. Request a transfer. Quit. Burn every bridge if you have to. Because once you cross 500 hours, you're gone. The person you were will cease to exist. What remains will be something else. Something that serves the system. Forever. I'm writing this during my lunch break at the Seattle field office. I'll be back at work in 15 minutes. I'll finish my day, drive home, have dinner. And at 11 p.m. I'll start driving south. Back to Reno. Back to Sublevel 3. Back to the archive. Just like I do every night. Just like I'll do every night for the rest of my existence. The boxes never stop moving, and neither do I. And soon, neither will you.